Chapter 209. Getting an Underling. It was as if the killing intent emanating from Kan Yi had solidified. Even a person with a strong will would shiver at this feeling. Yet his eyes were still very clear, as if they were the eyes of a pure infant, and somehow, these two contradicting auras were merged into one. That was because he was a born saber wielder. He drew his saber merely to defeat all opponents in front of him, in order to reach the highest point on the path of the saber. Ling Han only felt such an aura on the setting sword saber emperor before. This did not mean that Kan Yi was definitely able to become the second setting sun saber emperor, but he at least had the potential to if he was able to develop just like how the setting sun saber emperor had developed. But if he stayed for his whole life in Rain Country, then spiritual pedestal tier would definitely be the highest point he could reach. Ling Han moved his sword very slowly, and because he was resisting the killing intent exuding from Kan Yi, beads of sweat rolled down his forehead uncontrollably. If they fought on the same level, then it was unknown which one of them would win. What more when Ling Han had a much lower cultivation level than his opponent. So, naturally he was under extreme pressure. But the more pressure he felt, the brighter Ling Han's eyes became, as if his gaze could shoot through the skies. These two maniacs, monsters. Guang Yuan was secretly dumbstruck. A thought rose up in his midriff. He suppressed his cultivation level to the same level that these two people were on. He would definitely not have the courage to battle with either one of them. Merely the aura they exuded was enough to make anyone lose hope. Kan Yi never spoke falsehoods. And he had made his move. He slashed out with his saber, and the cold light of the saber swept towards Ling Han like water. Indeed, he would not be giving Ling Han any chance to gather power and use that sword style he had seen just now. In his eyes, as long as anyone forced him to draw his saber, then that was an enemy of his, and he was the type to use full effort against his enemies, completely destroying them. And that meant death. Though his eyes were still clear, with no hint of killing intent, the saber he had slashed out was like the god of death who had raised his sickle, ready to harvest a human life. Indeed, Ling Han did not continue to use that move, because he would be sliced in half before his move was even 1/3 complete and his blood would spill in all directions. But this was what he had expected. He stretched open his left hand, and a black light gushed out to actually become a screen in front of him. Then, it wrapped around his whole body to become a ball. Pang! This slash hit its target, but the black-colored ball was extremely sturdy and it was not sliced open. However, due to the powerful shockwave, the ball in Ling Han who was still inside was also flung upwards. The ball actually transformed in midair. It quickly stretched open and actually became a large umbrella, instantly slowing down the speed at which Ling Han was dropping to the ground. Like a deity, Ling Han slowly floated down from the air and firmly stood on the ground. The black-colored gigantic umbrella was instantly withdrawn and became a bangle that wrapped around his wrist. With a cough, Ling Han still spat out a mouthful of blood. Though he had used the blood-sucking origin gold to cleverly disperse the force behind this attack, he had still suffered a heavy attack when the slash fell on him, causing his internal organs to jolt, which was a very horrible feeling. In comparison, Kan Yi was really much more powerful. Previously, one strike from Ling Han was enough to defeat Nangong Xing, but now he was not able to even take a single slash from Kan Yi, if he had merely depended on his own power. Though Kan Ye's cultivation level was higher, and had reached the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier, it could be easily seen the level of talent that this young man had in the way of the saber. There was such a way too. Guang Yuan and Lu Yutong were both staring with wide eyes. Even with their sharp eyes, they were still unable to deduce what means Ling Han had used to disperse this attack of Kan Ye's. What kind of spiritual tool was that? It looked very awesome. Ling Han quickly recovered. He had the body of dead tree, and furthermore, with the indestructible heaven scroll circulating in his body, he would be able to recover as long as he was not dead no matter how serious his injuries were. He smiled softly and asked, "Little lackey Kan Yi, are we going to continue?" Kan Yi stood with his saber in hand, but his eyes were closed. After pondering for a moment, he opened his eyes, shook his head and said, "No, I am not able to unravel that move of yours just now." Though he himself said he was not able to unravel the move, his expression was extremely calm. It was as if he would experience no joy from winning nor sadness from losing, and possessed a terrifying calmness about him. "Then you'll be my lackey from now onwards," Ling Han said with a smile. Not bad, not bad. He managed to get a lackey with boundless future prospects. He really should drink some wine to celebrate.
Can Yi thought for a moment, then said, "When I am able to unravel that defensive move of yours, I will once again challenge you.
If you win, I will continue to listen to your commands. If not, you will lose your life."
That's fair.
Ling Han grinned.
Can Yi nodded and said, "Then I'll leave first.
If there's anything, just blow this whistle, and I will rush over at the first instant." He waved his hand and tossed a whistle over to Ling Han. Ling Han caught it and could not help but look at him strangely. "Were you born in the year of the dog? You can actually be summoned with a whistle like a dog. Brat, you're really sly, to actually use such a shameless method to deceive a genius of saber arts." After Ken Yi had left, Guang Yuan immediately jumped out and exclaimed at Ling Han. Ling Han pushed him aside and said, "What do you mean by deceive?" "Deceive your sister. I had used real power to subdue that brat, but if you're not convinced."
Guang Yuan laughed and said, "So what if I am not convinced?"
"Unless you want to fight with me and force me into submission? If you're not convinced, the door is there. Just go out and turn right."
"Godspeed, and I won't bother to see you out," Ling Han said lazily.
Instantly, Guang Yuan lost all the wind in his sails. He still had to depend on Ling Han to guide him in his cultivation of the large Sun Heaven Heart Scroll. What more when the large Sun Heaven Heart Scroll he had obtained was not the complete version? He still needed Ling Han to help him to fill in the blank spaces for him. If he really went out and turned right, then everything would be gone. "Hey, I am a spiritual ocean tier elite, after all. Shouldn't you respect me a bit more?" he said faintly. Ling Han immediately felt an urge to throw up and said, "Big brother Guang, don't be so sickening." Guang Yuan laughed loudly. He was not a spiritual ocean tier martial artist from one of the clans but a lone cultivator, so he knew when to retreat and when to advance, and was definitely not the type to place his pride over everything else. If it had been one of the spiritual ocean tier elites from one of the clans, they would have definitely left in a huff after being forced by Ling Han like that just now. Then he sighed and said, "That brat just now was really not bad. He's a natural genius of martial arts. Unfortunately, he is a saber wielder. If he wasn't, I would really consider taking him in as my disciple. Thank goodness he is not an expert in using his fists. If you really did take him in as a disciple, you would have definitely been beaten into pulp by Lian Guangzhu." Ling Han snickered. Guang Yuan was shocked and asked, "That brat is Lian Guangzhu's personal disciple?" "Exactly." Guang Yuan was at a loss for a moment, before he suddenly jumped up and moved to strangle Ling Han. "You stupidly bold guy. You actually deceived Master Lian's personal disciple into becoming your underling. If this was found out by Master Lian, he would definitely kill you, and even I will be dragged into the matter." Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "That's all right. At that time, I will definitely shove all the blame onto big brother Guang Yuan. Who would believe that I, who is merely in the first layer of element gathering tier, would have the ability to accomplish such a feat?" Guang Yuan only felt like he wanted to raise his head and moan to the heavens. He felt like he had never had the upper hand in his exchanges with Ling Han. On the other hand, he was always led around by the nose by Ling Han. He wore a strange expression and asked, "Are you really in the first layer of element gathering tier?" "Exactly." Ling Han smiled slightly.
"Fuck, if I believed your words, then I'd be a dumb pig,"
Guang Yuan exclaimed as he spat on the ground. Chapter 210. Devil Sky Mystery Realm. Reverie _ One origin nucleus had to be the first level of element gathering tier, no matter where one was. However, only Ling Han himself knew just how large the origin nucleus within his dantian was, and how shockingly fast it churned. The nucleus provided origin power far surpassing that of 9th layer of element gathering tier, even comparable to that of 1st layer of gushing spring tier. That boy just now is certainly a genius martial artist, but you kid are just a freak of a martial artist," Guang Yuan concluded. Ling Han shrugged, but didn't deny it. A heaven tier spirit entered this body, of course he's bound to be a freak. Also, this lore has no younger sister, so stop it with the your sister crap, Guang Yuan said casually. "PFF. Ling Han burst into laughter and patted Guang Yuan on the shoulder, then said, "Who would have thought old brother Guang had such a sense of humor? Not bad, not bad. You've got a good mentality, which will be more suitable for breaking through to higher tiers." Guang Yuan guffawed, feeling as though his mind was really much younger.
However, only after Ling Han turned to enter the room did he realize that he and Ling Han were really harmonious, as if the two had no difference in status.
One had to know the rigidity of the tiers in the martial arts world. Even a middle-stage element gathering tier and an early-stage element gathering tier had a chasm between them. Moreover, the two in question were separated by two great tiers. How could they get along as equals?
For example, earlier when Ling Han patted his shoulder, not to mention an element gathering tier, even if an early-stage spiritual ocean tier person did that, it would have still enraged him and he'd send the person flying with a slap. And he wouldn't even care about the aftermath. The life and death of the miserable guy would be based on their luck. He unexpectedly let Ling Han pat his shoulder and had a good talk with him, as if he really treated Ling Han as an equal.
This kid's got a weird charisma that made me involuntarily forget his age and tier in cultivation. Guang Yuan concluded and then muttered, "In short, this guy's a monster." This feeling wasn't Guang Yuan's alone. The eldest imperial prince and the third imperial prince who had royal blood and cultivation in far higher tiers still referred to Ling Han as brother, didn't they? Admittedly, Ling Han's background was in play, but his charisma was also affecting the two princes, earning their respect from the bottom of their hearts. Nan Gongxing was beaten, and the discipline committee was obstructed. This was supposed to be a big incident, but it involved Ling Han, so it turned from a big incident into a small one. No one brought up seizing Zhu Wujiu again, and of course no one said anything about punishing Ling Han. However, this was only a tacit state of affairs. Zhu Wujiu was fine if he stayed near Ling Han or the latter's quarters, but once he left or became isolated, then he'd definitely face the discipline committee's arrest. After all was said and done, this was only to give Ling Han face. A student could receive such face. How shocking was that? Zhu Wujiu and Guang Yuan settled in the courtyard. First of all, they were both men. Second of all, Guang Yuan kept watch, so the discipline committee wouldn't dare act rashly. Third of all, well, Guang Yuan could give some pointers to Zhu Wujiu, saving Ling Han some work. This caused Guang Yuan to bawl in anger. He felt that when he became Ling Han's underling, he only had to be a bodyguard, but why was he now instructing someone's cultivation? In the future, could he be forced to raise kids? 2 days later, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan hurried over. Just from the look of the two girls' expressions, something big definitely happened. Devil Sky Mystery Realm opened, the two girls said at the same time. Finding that they synchronized, they inevitably shot a glare at each other.
What Devil Sky Mystery Realm?
Ling Han looked confused. Mighty men exist who can sever the area we live by supreme mystical arts, forming a small world that is isolated from the normal world. We call it Mystery Realm, Lu Yutong explained. She knew that Ling Han came from a small place, Grey Cloud Town. Even though he was an alchemy genius, he definitely didn't understand anything about mystery realms. Ling Han obviously knew what mystery realms are, but he had never heard of Devil Sky Mystery Realm. However, with his abilities in the previous life, he was still unable to separate a part of the world to form a smaller world. Therefore, this was definitely only possible for a mighty shattering void tier. Unfortunately, even though he entered many historic sites, he never had a chance to enter a mystery realm. It was rumored, a mere rumor, that Heaven's Sword Sex Sword Emperor belonged to was located in such a mystery realm. Devil Sky Mystery Realm is an extremely large mystery realm that is hidden in Rain Country and Fire Country, and so on within the 9 nations of the desolate north. It's possible that the entire mystery realm is comparable to Rain Country's territory in size. It is layered in a mysterious way, hidden in the world we live in. Lu Xichan also started to explain, her eyes filled with utter admiration. This was a supreme handiwork that could separate a large space from the real world, layer it, and hide it. The thought of it was bewildering. Devil Sky Mystery Realm's original master died long ago, so the mystery realm isn't controlled by anyone. After a certain amount of time, a door will appear that will accept people. Lu Yutong followed hand in hand with Li Xichan, unexpectedly well coordinated. The opening time is not fixed. Sometimes it appears once in several hundred years, and sometimes it appears once every few decades, Li Xichan said. The last time Devil Sky Mystery Realm opened was 300 years ago. Devil Sky Mystery Realm has a decent amount of ancient arts and skills, and with enough luck, one may find them. It said the family that started the 9 nations of the desolate north was the first to enter Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and they obtained large amounts of arts and skills. Subsequently,
They quickly surpassed others, rebuilding the desolate north rampant with monsters into one that was suitable for humans to live in.
It is indeed so. I have seen my family's historic records with such a written account. There's more. Inside the mystery realm there are godly pills. Someone entered as a normal element gathering tier, but came out as a shocking spiritual pedestal tier. Inside Devil Sky Mystery Realm wait great opportunities. Both girls concluded at last. But, Lu Yutong immediately continued, Devil Sky Mystery Realm is not just about opportunities. It's rumored that when the original master of the Mystery Realm died, the master's body was invaded by evil qi, turning the master into a terrifying blood zombie. Every once in a while, when it opens, it's actually because it needs to feed on blood. Yes, that's why there are rules that when people enter, they must head to the Center Hall Suppression Stone tablet and pour some blood on top of it. 1,000 years ago, everyone wished someone else would pour their blood. As a result, the blood sacrificed was insufficient and a blood zombie appeared inside the Mystery Realm, sweeping across the 9 nations of the desolate north. In the end, flower blossom tier cultivators from the 9 large countries showed, giving up their lives to destroy the blood zombie, Li Xichan said. Ling Han showed an interested expression and muttered, blood zombie? He's never heard of a mystery realm like this that required blood sacrifice from those who entered. Normally, when a blood sacrifice was needed, there were only 2 possibilities. First, to nurture a great devil's body with blood, like blood-sucking origin gold. Secondly, to either break or strengthen a seal. Could it be that inside the mystery realm resides the subdued origin gold giant? He suddenly had a bold guess. Chapter 211. Setting Out. Ling Han had seen a small fragment of that great battle from the memory shards of the blood-sucking origin gold and could confirm one thing, and that was that giant formed of origin gold had definitely been defeated. According to his deduction, that giant should have been dismembered, with its parts scattered in all directions. However, there were other possibilities as well. For example, that giant of origin gold might only have had some portion of its body torn off while the majority of its body was still unscathed. If that was the case and the giant of origin gold had been suppressed within the mystery realm, then it would not be strange for a broken piece of its body to have appeared in Rain Country. Of course, the chances of this possibility were very low, pitifully low. But when he thought about how terrifying the giant of origin gold was, Ling Han still decided to venture into the Devil Sky Mystery Realm to take a look. If the giant of origin gold was indeed sealed within, then he must ensure that the seal was being strengthened, and not weakened. So many years have already passed. Even a monster like that origin gold giant should have died by now, right? Ling Han reassured himself in this way. However, in the case of an existence like the origin gold giant, even if it had indeed died of old age, its immortal body could still give birth to a second life, though it would be a completely different person. Whatever the case, there was definitely a need for him to go to this Devil Sky Mystery Realm. How do you enter the Devil Sky Mystery Realm? He questioned. It's very easy. After the Mystery Realm has opened, teleportation doors will appear in various places. Once one passes through these doors, he will have directly entered into the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, Lu Yutong said. She paused for a while, then continued. The reason why we know that the Mystery Realm has opened is precisely because the doors have appeared. 3 doors have appeared in Rain Country this time. The nearest one is 300 miles east of the Imperial City, Li Xichan said. Ling Han nodded, then asked, in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, aside from Blood Zombie, what other danger is there? The humans who used to live there have long perished, but there are still some demonic beasts within. Moreover, they seem to be trapped inside, and there is no way to bring them out either. Additionally, we also have no means to stay too long inside. After a certain period of time, we will automatically be ejected out of the Mystery Realm, Lu Yutong answered. According to rumors, there is a terrifying creature in the deepest parts of the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. That area is forbidden. We will only be touring around the outer boundaries. The Mystery Realm has only appeared after such a long time, so there must definitely be a large number of spiritual herbs that have already matured. They are our main targets, Li Xichan said. Lu Yutong nodded in agreement. As far as cultivation and martial arts techniques went, after so many generations of being harvested, it was practically impossible that there would still be any left. But it was different in the case of spiritual herbs. They could harvest a batch this time round, and the next appearance would probably be at least dozens of years later. Especially this time. It has only reappeared after 300 years,
So there must definitely be a large amount of spiritual herbs just waiting to be harvested.
What are the restrictions for entering the Devil Sky Mystery Realm? Ling Han continued to ask. In simple words, the lower your ability, the easier it would be to enter. However, every time is different. Sometimes, even spiritual pedestal tier elites could enter, but there were also times when even gushing spring tier martial artists were unable to enter, Lu Yutong said with a shake of her head. Ling Han thought for a moment, then felt that it was all right. Firstly, he had not offended any spiritual pedestal tier elites. Secondly, if even spiritual ocean tier elites could enter, he still had Guang Yuan by his side. Thirdly, if only those in gushing spring tier and below could enter, then he had completely no fear. Even if he encountered such elites like Ken Yi and the eldest imperial prince, he would at least have the ability to keep his life. Moreover, wasn't Ken Yi currently his underling? Not long after, the Hu Yang Academy made an announcement, commanding all students to immediately set off and enter the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. Meanwhile, those who would be entering the center hall to sacrifice some of their blood were given the first priority. If too little blood was sacrificed, then a blood zombie would appear to spread ruin and destruction in the world, and by then, who knows how many would die. Very soon, Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, Jin Wuji, Bailey Tengyun and the others all raced over to Ling Han's place. They had all come from the Dayuan city, so they were naturally intending to form a group and help each other. Brother Ling, your cultivation level. Qi Yongyi was the first to notice, and could not help but be extremely shocked. Why has it regressed back to the first layer of element gathering tier? Jin Wuji and the others all respectively sensed for Ling Han's aura, and indeed, there seemed to be only one origin nucleus. Disbelieving expressions too appeared on their faces. They had only heard of people being stuck on a cultivation level and being unable to break through for a long time, but this was the first time they had seen a person's cultivation level actually drop to such a drastic level. Ling Han laughed, and naturally offered no explanation. He said, "Since everyone's here, then let's set out." Qi Yongyi and the others were aware as well that Ling Han was very awesome in the field of alchemy. In the Dayuan city, he was already able to subdue 3 black-grade alchemists, and now he was even more awesome as even black-grade middle-level alchemists revered him. From this aspect, what difference did it make whether Ling Han's own cultivation level was a bit lower or a bit higher? They all set out. Ling Han also dropped by at the Heaven's Medicine Pavilion and invited Li Hao as well. It was only then that the group finally left the Imperial City and headed east. On their journey, more and more people appeared. The Devil Sky Mystery Realm was not all about good stuff like cultivation techniques and spiritual herbs, it also required a large number of people to make a blood sacrifice. Otherwise, a blood zombie would appear. Thus, no matter how strong or weak anyone was, it was best to donate a bit of their blood for the sacrifice. This was a matter of national importance, and the power of the imperial family was already effectively in action, maneuvering the citizens of various cities to head towards the Devil Sky Mystery Realm. After half a day, Ling Han's group had finally arrived at the location of the teleportation doors. Rather than calling it a door, it seemed more fitting to refer to it as a standing vortex. There was black-colored light twisting and turning within it, and it was about 10 meters tall. It was an imposing sight. There was no front or back to this teleportation door. No matter which side a person jumped through, he would still immediately disappear as if he had been swallowed whole. Ling Han nodded internally. He had never had the ability to create such a thing in his last life. Only almighty warriors of Shattering Void tier were capable of that. There were a few who could no longer wait and entered, while others were still waiting outside. They seemed to be trying to gather a group. Once a big enough group had appeared, they would enter. And before each of them entered, they would be given a brand and a map. The brand showed that they were citizens of Rain Country, whereas the map was very simple, only marking where the center hall was located. The people of the 9 nations of the desolate north could enter through the teleportation doors that were scattered everywhere, so it was not just limited to the people of Rain Country. For example, Rain Country and Fire Country were neighboring countries, and conflicts would frequently erupt between these 2 nations. It was unknown how many had died in these conflicts after these few thousand years, so the 2 countries have long become deadly enemies. Thus, whenever the citizens of these 2 countries encountered each other, they would definitely attempt to kill the other. This brand was what was used to identify friends and enemies. It was directly branded on one's arm and could last for about a month, so it was more than enough time. The restrictions for the teleportation doors this time were not too low. Even those in spiritual ocean tier could enter, but spiritual pedestal tier martial artists could not.
Ling Han.
A voice forced out through gritted teeth was heard, filled with endless hatred. Ling Han turned his head to look, and couldn't help but look strangely at the owner of the voice. Feng Luo. Did this guy have the life of a cockroach or something? He actually appeared again. Moreover, his two arms were indeed reattached, but it was obvious they were not very nimble. It seemed like they were simply glued on and hung at his sides, looking very out of sorts. After all, it was already very impressive that they managed to reattach his arms, but if they were still able to move as nimbly as if they had never been sliced off, then that was practically illogical. In their last clash, it was because they had underestimated Ling Han that he had the opportunity to capture Feng Luo and hold him hostage, forcing them to be helpless against him. But this did not mean that Ling Han was able to oppose them in a direct clash. Element Gathering Tier will only be Element Gathering Tier, after all.
Get out of my way, smelly pests,
Ling Han said coldly, the killing intent exuding from him almost seeming solid. The four guardian deities looked angered. This time, you have no hostage in your hands, so how are you going to oppose us?
Kill him. Kill him.
Feng Luo screamed in spite of himself. As Ling Han approached, he could not help but recall the few times he had clashed with Ling Han was scared off, kicked away, his mouth full of teeth was smacked out, and finally, even his two arms were sliced off. As he looked at Ling Han's slender figure come closer, he instantly had a mental breakdown.
Kill.
Kill him. He wailed, tears and snot pouring down his face. The four guardian deities were disdainful of such a hideous display, but who asked him to be Feng Yan's brother? They stared at Ling Han with cold eyes. This was a very good chance for them to act. The one who is going to die today is you, Ling Han said. He moved, and actually charged directly towards the four guardian deities. Insolence! The four guardian deities shouted in rage. This brat had succeeded once in dodging their hands. Could it be he wanted to attempt the same thing again? Did he really think they were idiots?
Ling Han.
Qi Yongyi and the others all exclaimed in shock. They never thought that he would be so awesome and simply clashed head-on with four gushing spring tier elites just like that.
Hong, 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 hong.
Four attacks were simultaneously launched and swept towards Ling Han.
This time, the four guardian deities had all had an upgrade of 1 battle star in their battle prowess, and if the four of them joined forces, they were definitely capable of instantly killing any martial artist in the 9th layer of Element Gathering Tier no matter what kind of genius he was.
However, Ling Han was not at the peak period of Element Gathering Tier. Instead, he had transformed 9 into 1, and had successfully captured the evasive 1. The 10th layer of Gushing Spring Tier. Ling Han used the exiting cloud steps and his figure miraculously broke through the combined barrage of attacks of the four guardian deities like a ghost and appeared in front of Feng Luo in a flash. He stretched out a hand to grab onto Feng Luo's neck.
Save me!
Feng Luo shrieked in panic. The four guardian deities were both shocked and enraged. They could not imagine how Ling Han had somehow managed to break through their combined attacks, and a thought appeared in their minds. History is probably going to repeat itself. Indeed, they were one step too late, and were unable to stop Ling Han. They could only watch as Feng Luo was subdued by Ling Han in a single move.
Let go of young Master Luo! The four guardian deities shouted grimly yet did not dare make a move, just in case Ling Han would do any harm to Feng Luo.
This scene was very familiar, causing their faces to burn as if they had just been given a slap. To actually fall for the same trick twice, were they idiots? Of course not. This was because Ling Han was too powerful for them now. Ling Han did not concern himself with the four guardian deities. He merely stared at Feng Luo, then asked darkly, "You want to kill my entire family?"
Ling Han, you will not dare to kill me.
If you have balls, you can cripple my arms again. Anyways, my brother will definitely return to save me. Just wait, when my brother comes back, I will definitely massacre your whole family. His fear had reached extreme levels, and Feng Luo simply threw caution to the wind and stared back at Ling Han with fierce eyes. Come on if you have the balls, cripple me again. If you don't, then you are a fuck grandson. Ling Han, I'm not scared of you. You have no idea what kind of power my brother has obtained, not even the rain.
Pooh!
A crisp sound was heard, and Feng Luo's head had disappeared as Ling Han had smacked it into his chest. Only after a while could blood be seen gushing out from his neck. A dead silence enveloped the surroundings. Ling Han smacked his hands together and said, "The world has finally become quiet." "Young Master Luo!" The 4 guardian deities all cried out. However, after losing support from Ling Han, Feng Luo's legs swayed a few times, then fell to the ground loudly. Even the head has been stuffed into his chest. How could he possibly still be alive? Unless he really was a cockroach. Murder! Murder! Seeing such a scene, immediately some began to cry out. However, though there was a large number of Imperial guards maintaining order here, there were even more people all around, and everywhere was noisy. Not one Imperial guard managed to come over in such a short while. "You killed young Master Luo. When my lord returns, he will definitely tear you to pieces." The elephant guardian deity called out sternly. "You speak as if I have a very good relationship with Feng Yan." Ling Han shrugged, not taking such a threat seriously at all. Chapter 213. Little Yi Yi. What's going on here? A few Imperial guards arrived slowly. When they saw a headless corpse on the ground, their expressions immediately changed. They were responsible for maintaining order in this place, and now that someone has died, it would be difficult for them to make their report. "Sirs, this man committed murder in public. We implore you, sirs, to act and apprehend him." The 4 guardian deities all pointed at Ling Han. When the Imperial guards saw Ling Han, they couldn't stop their faces from twitching. They naturally knew who Ling Han was. Their superiors had already commanded repeatedly that they were definitely not to come into conflict with this person. But this brat really caused too much worry. How could he simply commit murder in public? Ling Han scoffed and said, "Firstly, there is a need for me to correct you. This is not the Imperial City. As martial artists, it is only a matter of course for us to have conflicts with each other in the wild. Just now I had a bit of a conflict with that idiot, but in the end, this idiot was really too weak. Just one blow, and he was finished." Everyone stared blankly. Indeed, this was not the Imperial City. It was 700 miles away from the Imperial City.
It was just the fact that everyone around here had come from the Imperial City, and there were also the Imperial guards maintaining order here, which led them to still have the mindset that they were in the Imperial City.
Fights and battles in the wild were indeed much too common. The number of people in Rain Country who had died because of this every year was uncountable.
If each and every case was pursued, then Rain Country would probably be finished, because every single party was more or less involved in such battles.
However, though that was the logic, why did it sound a bit strange? "Don't create any more trouble. Otherwise, we will be placing you under arrest. If anyone dares resist, he will be killed with no exception." One of the Imperial guards finally decided not to pass judgment on Ling Han's life until he was dead. "Agreed." Ling Han raised his hand and said. He had already killed the person he wanted to kill, and what had followed would be the 4 guardian deities going crazy. He had no intention to make a move at all. The 4 guardian deities were so mad they could spit blood. Wasn't this aimed at them? "Let's go. We'll go into the mystery realm. Everything will be discussed after my lord returns," the wolf guardian deity said in a low voice. "When my lord returns this time, he will be bringing with him supreme authority.
Not even if the Rain Emperor appeared would he be able to save this brat."
The tiger guardian deity nodded as well. "Enter the mystery realm," the elephant guardian deity said through gritted teeth. They had once again failed to protect Feng Luo. Who knows whether or not Feng Yan would vent his fury on them when he returned. Just the thought of him was enough to freeze their hearts in their chests. The 4 guardian deities entered into the mystery realm one by one, and instantly disappeared. It was only now that Qi Yongyi and the others sighed in relief. They realized that there was a layer of cold sweat on their foreheads, and they could feel that their bodies were cold. "Brother Ling, you are really too bold," Bailey Tengyun said, having lingering fear in his heart. "He's just a smelly bug. If I've stamped him to death, then I've stamped him to death," Ling Han said unconcernedly. Though Feng Luo is not one to be feared, but Feng Yan, Qi Yongyi merely began. Who did not know that Feng Yan was extremely influential now? He could practically do anything in the academy, and just the thought of forming a deadly enmity with Feng Yan was enough to scare anyone. "AI, little Yi Yi. Ling Han suddenly waved at someone behind them.
Qi Yongyi and the others all turned around to look, and saw that it was a young man who only had one arm. He was only one person with one saber, but it was like he was a master of nature, with a supreme aura circulating around him.
Anyone would become extremely insignificant in front of him. Can Yi? But, little Yi Yi. Everyone's expressions became a little strange. Could it be that there was some ambiguous relation that could not be revealed between these two men? Can Yi walked over and did not show any objection nor discomfort at how Ling Han had addressed him. Only the saber existed in his heart and spirit. So what if the whole world slandered him or spoke ill of him? One slash from him, and everything would be silenced. All right, since everyone in our group is here, let's go. Ling Han said, smiling. When had Can Yi become one of their group? Qi Yongyi and the others were all astonished, but they did not say anything more. Instead, they kept close behind Ling Han and walked towards the teleportation door. As for the problem of Feng Yan, it was best to leave it to be discussed later. Xiao. They passed through one by one. Ling Han was carrying Hu Niu, and in the instant he passed through the vortex, he felt as if even his soul was about to torn apart. Time seemed to have lost all meaning, forever stagnating in that one moment. He had just barely finished that thought when he suddenly appeared in an unfamiliar world. The green grass was laid out like a mattress, as if it was an ocean. As a breeze blew past, the grass would sway slightly, as if a gentle wave had passed through. There was an indescribable beauty to this place. However, aside from Hu Niu, who was carried in his arms, his surroundings were completely empty. There was not even a ghost around. Random teleportation. Ling Han frowned. He had asked many questions, but this was the only thing he had not asked about. In the end, it was an absolute waste for them to have gathered before, and there was no point to it at all. Thankfully, Hu Niu was clinging to him all along. Otherwise, who knows where this little girl would be sent to? Without him there to control her, who knows what kind of trouble the little girl would get into, especially with her ferocious nature. Wah! Hu Niu jumped down from Ling Han's body. Using all four of her limbs, she began to race around madly. She had grown up in the forest since she was a child, and this kind of world was where she truly belonged. Ling Han walked ahead, whereas Hu Niu was racing around happily. At one moment, she would be in front of Ling Han, and in the next, she would be behind him. Sometimes, she would be to his left, while at other times, she would be to his right. Even Ling Han was infected by her happy mood, and could not help but smile. Danger! He was suddenly alerted, and hurriedly leaped towards Hu Niu. Xiao, a small white creature suddenly jumped out. It was a rabbit. It had been chewing on the grass, but Hu Niu's running around had scared it out, making Ling Han think that it had been an enemy. He smiled and stopped walking. Hu Niu, on the other hand, perked up and immediately tried to capture it. She raced after the rabbit, her mouth open wide, and kept trying to bite it. Obviously, Hu Niu did not think the rabbit was cute at all, and merely thought of it as prey. Xiao, the rabbit fled very quickly, but Hu Niu was not too slow either. She chased after it quickly, and Ling Han's yell did not manage to stop Hu Niu, so he could only follow at her heels. After a while, the rabbit scrambled into the grass, and there was no sign of it left. It seemed that it had fled into a rabbit's hole. Hu Niu immediately began to dig at the ground with both hands, intending to capture this rabbit at all costs. Forget it, though that little guy is very fat, with your appetite, it's not even enough to be an appetizer. Ling Han picked Hu Niu up. The little girl was very displeased, pouting her mouth to show her displeasure. Xiao. It was at this moment that a lot of rabbits jumped out from the rabbit's hole. However, these rabbits were not cute all. They were as big as dogs, and had bright red eyes, exuding a bloodthirsty aura. Damn! Ling Han cursed internally and could not help but be cautious. That was because these rabbits were actually in element gathering tier, and there were even 2 of them that were in gushing spring tier. 30, 40, 50. Their numbers increased further and further. Finally, a giant rabbit that was about the size of a human being jumped out, and this last rabbit exuded an aura that would only come from someone in the late stage of gushing spring tier. Some people would say that they've poked the hornet's nest, but now, it's become the rabbit's nest one.
Ling Han's eyes swept over and he had done his calculations mentally. 1 was in the late stage of gushing spring tear, 7 were in the middle stage of gushing spring tear, 21 were in the early stage of gushing spring tear, and there were even as many as 100 rabbits in element gathering tear. He immediately realized there was no way to win, then hurriedly picked up Hunyo and fled. Since there was no way to win, then he'd just have to flee. That was the easiest way out.
Chapter 214. Grassy Plains.
There was no other option but to flee. If there were less than 10 of them in the early stage of gushing spring tear, Ling Han could still somehow manage to fight them. But there were about 20 of them here, more than enough to drown him to death. What more when there were some that were in the middle stage and 1 in the late stage of gushing spring tear? If Ling Han had really charged forwards, that was not called battle. That was called delivering himself up to die. He began to run, while those rabbits behind him refused to give up chasing after him. Previously, it was Hunyo who had been chasing after the little rabbit. Now, their positions were switched, and it was them now who were running like crazy. Hunyo was not anxious at all. She kept smacking Ling Han's shoulder and saying, "Run faster! Run faster!" This little girl. How could Ling Han spare the time to chastise the little girl? He could only channel all his energy into running for their lives. But the rabbit demons were well known for their speed in the first place. What more when there was an old rabbit monster that was in the late period of gushing spring tear? Thus, in just a few moments, they were right behind Ling Han and opened their mouths, ready to bite. As the old saying goes, if forced into desperate straits, even rabbits would bite. The 2 front teeth of that old rabbit demon were like hose, long and sharp, flickering with cold light. Ling Han transformed the blood-sucking origin gold into a shield and blocked this attack. A powerful shock wave shook him, causing him to feel so bad he practically wanted to spit out blood. And with such a pause, the large number of rabbit demons who were right behind had come nearer. From the way things were going now, he would definitely be unable to escape. Ling Han sighed, drew out a swift cloud talisman and slapped it onto his body. Wang! This ordinary-looking talisman paper suddenly shone brilliantly, and an indescribable power gushed into his body. Xiao! He once again began to run furiously, and his speed had immediately increased tenfold. Xi! 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 The rabbit demons released squeaks of anger, but Ling Han was getting farther and farther from them. Finally, Ling Han had left them completely behind him, and there was no sign of him left in their eyes. Once a spiritual talisman was used, there would be no way to stop its effects. Ling Han did not want to waste it, so he continued to run forwards, and only when the effects of the swift cloud talisman were completely spent did he stop. He took out an alchemical pill and swallowed it to heal the internal injuries he had suffered when he had clashed head-on with that old rabbit demon just now. The indestructible heaven scroll was circulated, and his injuries were healing at a visible rate. As long as it's not a major injury to my nerves or bones, I would be able to recover my injuries in the time for a cup of hot tea. Ling Han smiled. However, even if I had suffered heavy injuries, I still have a drop of indestructible true fluid. Fun! Fun!
Hunyo said happily.
Little girl, just to let you have a little fun for that short while, I actually used up a swift cloud talisman. Ling Han shook his head, petted Hunyo's head, and said, "This is a very dangerous place. Nyo Nyo, be good and don't run around anymore." "And Nyo is a good Nyo will be good."
Hunyo nodded her head earnestly, looking very serious. Ling Han laughed.
Just now, if Hunyo had not gone to chase after that little rabbit, then would they still have disturbed those demonic beasts when they passed by the lair of the rabbit demons?
The answer was, who knows?
That was because the rabbits lived underground, and were very sensitive to the tremors above the ground. Moreover, those red-eyed rabbits were obviously very ferocious. Perhaps even if they had not disturbed them, they would still have gone berserk.
Now, where should we go?
He drew out the map. The entire Devil's Sky Mystery Realm was very big and was rumored to be comparable to a country in size. This map only marked the outermost zone, which was roughly about 1/10 of the area of the whole Mystery Realm. Which also meant that the 9 nations of the desolate north had only managed to make it this far, while the area beyond that was much too dangerous and there was no way to access it. But it was also possible that some great party had made it into a deeper area but, to keep the benefits for themselves, did not share that information with anyone else. This was very possible because the deeper into the Mystery Realm, the higher the grade of the cultivation and martial arts techniques would have to be, so why did they have to share that information with others?
Why should they not leave it for themselves to exploit?
However, the Devil Sky Mystery Realm would rarely open, once in dozens of years at least, or a few hundred years at most.
This was not very good to arrange. There were some parties that had been extremely influential the last time it opened, but may probably have declined to unimaginable levels the next time it opened. My current location, the outermost zone is a plain, and has been named as the Grassy Plains. As long as I walk towards the center, there will be a ring-shaped mountain, which has a total of 4 ravines through which I can enter. And at the end of every ravine, there is a center hall. If I want to enter the deeper areas of the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, I must pass through the 4 ravines unless I am able to scale this ring-shaped mountain. However, it is said that this mountain is 1,000 feet tall and is extremely steep, so there is no way to climb up the mountain. Then I should find a ravine first. I am very curious about the depths of this mystery realm. What could be concealed inside?
Ling Han looked into the distance, and indeed, he was able to see a dark shadow at the horizon. That would be the ring-shaped mountain, and it was so tall that it looked like it was connected to the sky.
Let's go. Hunyo acted like an adult, tugged on Ling Han's hand and walked forwards. They began their advance towards the ring-shaped mountain.
Ling Han very quickly discovered that there was no night in here, and though the sky was bright, there was no sun.
This was not a complete world. Instead, it was carved out from the real world by an almighty person with supreme methods, so it was naturally not the same as the real world. This was his first time entering into a mystery realm and he could not help but be astonished, feeling everything was very novel. After journeying for about half a day, the little girl began to exclaim in her hunger. Ling Han was also feeling a little hungry.
Thankfully, he had a spatial ring, and had already readied a supply of food which was stored inside.
And in order to satisfy Hunyo's monstrous appetite, he had also prepared some demonic beast meat. It was also a piece of meat, but it contained tenfold the energy that could be gotten from eating normal meat. The higher the grade of the demonic beast, the more energy and power was contained in their blood and bones. The little girl had a very big appetite as her body required a colossal amount of energy, but there were also times when she had eaten too much, such as the time when she had eaten the root of that divine medicine. It directly transformed Hunyo into an egg. After eating their meal, they journeyed for a while longer before stopping to rest. They set up a tent on the grass and after enough sleep, they once again continued their journey. There would be people of the 9 nations gathered here as well, and the highest cultivation level that could enter was spiritual ocean tier. Thus, they had to ensure that they were in prime condition at all times. Otherwise, if they were killed off, whom should they cry out their grievances to? The random teleportation is really detestable. Ling Han sighed. Otherwise, he would have Guang Yuan by his side and would also be able to command Qin Yi, so he would not have to be so cautious like how he was now. Though they could not see the change from day to night here, Ling Han was still keeping track of the passage of time in his heart. After about 3 days, they could finally see the true form of the ring-shaped mountain ahead of them, and not the black lump they had been seeing for the last few days. By this point, there was also gradually more trees, and it was no longer purely grass being the dominant plant species around them. These trees were all purple in color, scattered throughout a green plain that stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a unique scenery. Stand right there. A voice was suddenly heard from the top of a tree. Ling Han raised his head and saw that there was a person hunched down on top. The person was continuously waving a hand at him, signaling at him to stop going forwards. His eyes were sharp enough to see that the brand on the other's arm was the same as his. Why? Ling Han questioned. That man looked a bit defiant, but he was more afraid that Ling Han would spoil things, so he could only say, "We are getting ready to kill a fire-eyed bull, and this is the encirclement zone we have set up. That fire-eyed bull is about to be tempted over, and if you enter, you may ruin our plans." Chapter 215. Fire-eyed Bull. The fire-eyed bull was a level 3 demonic beast. It was not a very high level, but its eyes were a treasure. It could resist extreme cold, thus they were very highly prized by adventurers, for they would be extremely useful when one explored those places that were freezingly cold. As a result, there were pitifully few fire-eyed bulls left, and the price for the eyeballs of the fire-eyed bull had also become astronomical. When these people discovered that there were fire-eyed bulls here, it was unavoidable that they would have the desire to hunt them down. However, the fire-eyed bulls moved in a herd, and if they launched a stampede, then only spiritual ocean tier elites would be able to oppose them.
Evidently, there was no one in spiritual ocean tier amongst these people, so there was a need for them to think how to lure one away from the herd.
Only when one of them was away from its herd would they gang up on it and kill it. These thoughts flashed through Ling Han's head in an instant. He smiled slightly and said, "This place does not belong to you, and I'm walking my way here, so why do I need to circle around and take a different path?"
"You!" That man was at a loss for words, but then he immediately glared at Ling Han and shouted, "If you don't get lost, I'll kill you.
You are merely in the first layer of element gathering tier, and you actually dare to be so arrogant." This man was only in the 7th layer of element gathering tier, but against an opponent in the first layer of element gathering tier, he was perfectly able to suppress him. Ling Han sighed. Now that he was left with only one origin nucleus, it seemed very capable of attracting enemies to him. He looked at the man and asked, "Are you sure you want to use force?" Hong Long Long. It was right at this moment that a black shape appeared, approaching them at an extremely rapid pace. When he looked closely, it was a black-colored bull, but there seemed to be a flame lit and brightly burning within its eyes. There was a martial artist in front of this bull who obviously had the same plan as these people, which was to tempt a single bull away from its herd. Ling Han's heart moved, and the strange fire was currently dancing in his left hand. It was currently making ee-yeah-yeah sounds, transmitting a blurry thought to him, just like Hunyo when she was proclaiming her hunger. The strange fire seemed to be very interested in the two flames burning in the eyes of the fire-eyed bull, wanting to swallow them. Ling Han nodded and communicated a thought over, saying, "If I have the chance, I'll get it for you." He did not make any guarantees, because he had no idea what was the power level of this group of people. He had only seen 2 of their group so far. When he saw Ling Han did not move, the man at the top of the tree did not speak either. Instead, he stared at the fire-eyed bull anxiously. "Attack!" A large shout was issued, and 10+ people jumped down from the trees or scrambled out of the grass, managing to surround that bull from all sides. Ling Han's eyes swept over them as he counted their numbers in his heart, 1 in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring Tier, 1 in the 2nd layer of Gushing Spring Tier, 1 in the 3rd layer of Gushing Spring Tier 1, and the other 12 are in Element Gathering Tier. There should be no problem. The problem here was that fire-eyed bull. The fire-eyed bull was a level 3 demonic beast, but it was uncertain where in level 3 it was. That was because demonic beasts had a different system of cultivation from humans, so it was very difficult to sense their level.
But for Ling Han, his senses far surpassed any ordinary person's. Perhaps even the senses of a spiritual pedestal tier elite were no stronger than his.
This fire-eyed bull seems to be in the late stage of Gushing Spring Tier. The corner of Ling Han's lips twitched. The late stage of Gushing Spring Tier would absolutely dominate over an opponent in the early stage of Gushing Spring Tier. 3 martial artists in Gushing Spring Tier were absolutely insufficient to compensate for such a massive gap in power. Moreover, demonic beasts had thick hides, so even if a martial artist was in the same level of the demonic beast, it was still very difficult to kill it. What more when there was a difference in level? Unless there was some secret treasure on these martial artists that could somehow turn things around. That martial artist who had been at the top of tree naturally jumped down as well and joined his companions in ganging up on the fire-eyed bull. Ling Han didn't act too reserved, climbed up the tree, and occupied the man's previous position, watching the show with Hunyo. 15 people all drew their weapons and began to gang up on the bull, but the fire-eyed bull also showed off its formidable side, beginning to charge violently at those people. It actually spat out very powerful fireballs from its mouth as well. One of the men carelessly used his sword to block one of them, but could not slice it in half at all, so the fireball crashed into his chest directly and immediately burnt a big hole through his body, killing him in an instant. When the rest saw this, the expressions on the faces of the remaining 14 all changed drastically and they became much more careful in their movements. But this fire-eyed bull was too powerful. With the supportive power of the late stage of Gushing Spring Tier, it was completely unstoppable. Crashing and flinging its horns, it dominated everyone. Rather than saying they were ganging up on it, it might be more appropriate to say it was ravaging them. Pang pang pang. The martial artists of Element Gathering Tier were continuously being flung away by the bull as if they were scarecrows. Even if they had not been hit by the fireballs, it was definitely not a good feeling to be pierced or struck by the bull's horns. There were a few whose stomachs had been pierced through and their intestines were exposed, making for an appalling scene of devastation. Senior Brother Ma, we must use our ultimate move, the martial artist in the second layer of gushing spring tear said.
Fuck! The martial artist in the third layer of gushing spring tear, who had been addressed as Senior Brother Ma, cursed and drew out a spirit talisman from his robes reluctantly and slapped it onto his body.
Just to kill a fire-eyed bull, I have to use a strength talisman. There won't be much profit left. The others were all silent, because Senior Brother Ma was only concerned about how much money he could earn, and showed no concern for those who were injured or killed. This made them feel very disillusioned. They were not together at first. Instead, they had encountered Senior Brother Ma and his two companions on their way here. Due to the threats and promises of the latter, they had joined this hunting party, but from the look of things now, they were merely bait and tools to distract the bull. The spirit talisman immediately took effect. Senior Brother Ma roared loudly and, unbelievably, actually swelled up to double his previous size. Pa pa pa, the clothes on his body were immediately torn to pieces. Thankfully, his underpants seemed to be made of some unknown material, and were tough enough not to be torn by his sudden increase in size. Numerous veins were protruding on his body. His muscles sturdy, seeming to be full of strength. Strength talisman, which claimed that miracles could be achieved through massive strength because enough strength would be able to dominate over anything in its way. The fire-eyed bull looked at him with dread. This human gave it a feeling of danger. It stopped, aimed its horns at Senior Brother Ma, and its front hooves endlessly dug at the ground. Go! Dang! Senior Brother Ma roared in rage, waved the metal staff in his hands and struck out at the fire-eyed bull. The fire-eyed bull was obviously a brute force type, and dodging was not something it was good at. Thus, faced with such a strike, it had no intention to dodge. Instead, it raised its horns to receive this attack. Pang! The metal staff struck upon the bull's horns, creating a rain of fiery sparks. The front leg of the fire-eyed bull was forced into the ground, stopping just before the point where its leg joined its body. Meanwhile, the metal staff was also flung out due to the impact, causing the web between the thumb and the forefinger of Senior Brother Ma to tear, and instantly, blood gushed out. When Ling Han saw his, he could not help but shake his head, thinking secretly that these were two idiots to actually use strength in the stupidest of ways like this. But if an idiot was battling another idiot, that was good. In such a head-on clash, the victor would be decided very quickly. The fire-eyed bull exerted force through its legs, and immediately sprung out of the ground. However, after this head-on clash, it had a stronger feeling of dread now, and no longer dared to attack carelessly. Instead, it stared at Senior Brother Ma with extreme caution in its eyes. In the understanding of demonic beasts, the first priority was to survive. Attack with me, and we'll kill this animal. Senior Brother Ma called out sternly. He needed the others to create an opportunity for him to attack. Chapter 216. 10-Way Destruction. Reverie _ No one wanted to attack because Senior Brother Ma already used up a strength talisman. This thing was very expensive, amounting to not much less than the value of a fire-eyed bull, so even if they took down the latter, Senior Brother Ma would take the largest share, and just how much would the others get? To risk one's life for a few hundred silvers, who wanted to do such a thing? But they couldn't not do it. Senior Brother Ma was staring fiercely at them. Whoever didn't fight would definitely be the first one to be killed by Senior Brother Ma. There were no laws here. They had to force themselves to fight, but each one was more cautious than another, scared of being rammed by the bull or shot by its fireballs. Otherwise, even if they didn't die, they'd lose half their lives. Although they were weak, they could at least attract some of the fire-eyed bull's attention. Senior Brother Ma took advantage of it to strike, and with loud pang pang pang, a great battle ensued again. Senior Brother Ma was now able to fight on par with the fire-eyed bull. On top of the 10 helpers, he naturally had the upper hand. Taking several hits on the waist and back from Senior Brother Ma, the fire-eyed bull showed fear. It wanted to run. However, Senior Brother Ma and the rest already paid such a high price. There was no way they'd allow their prey to escape. Naturally, they obstructed its way with all their might, and soon, the fire-eyed bull was riddled with injuries. The demonic beast knew it was impossible to escape by now, so instead it bore a fierce look, full of a resolute atmosphere. It was about to put up a desperate fight. The fire-eyed bull has an innate mystic art, 10-Way Destruction, which ignites the source of firepower within its body at once, the damage it deals is extremely terrifying. However, this will also shatter the fire-eyed bull's source of firepower, with no possibility of ever recovering, Ling Han muttered to himself. Yes, yes, yes. Hu Niu sat prim and proper, continually nodding her head as if she could understand. It was obvious that Senior Brother Ma and the others did not know Fire-Eyed Bull's ultimate ability, continually attacking aggressively on all sides. Give it some more effort, everyone. This demonic beast bull is about to reach its end. Although the bull's eyes are the most valuable, if there's a bezoar in its body, then it'll be quite a gain. Give it your all. If anyone dares to slack off, humph, I'll let them know regret later. Under Senior Brother Ma and the other two's strict orders, everyone was forced to put more strength into their attacks, giving Senior Brother Ma more chances to attack. Hong! A strong fire gushed out fiercely from within the fire-eyed bull's body, shooting in all directions like 1,000 or 10,000 fireballs shooting out together. Other than to back off, there was no chance to dodge it. However, the speed at which the flame burst out was too fast. Only Senior Brother Ma and his companions who were at higher tiers managed to escape the area of the bursting flame, while the others were all burned to dust. Despite evading, Senior Brother Ma and his companions had several burnt marks on their bodies, a spot of black and a spot of burnt, looking rather beaten. With this ultimate attack unleashed, the fire-eyed bull instantly had no strength left to stand, falling onto the ground with a pung. Damn it! Damn it! Senior Brother Ma cursed while crying out in pain. I've got to waste a lot more medicine pills to heal. This time there is really almost no profit. In any case, we still took down this demonic beast. One of the others smiled and walked up to strike another blow, piercing into the fire-eyed bull's brain. The bull's limbs suddenly convulsed, and then became motionless again. Its life came to an end. However, we still need to get rid of someone. Senior Brother Ma carried his rod and walked toward the tree where Ling Han sat. He revealed a smirk and said, "Kid, you thought I wouldn't find a rat like you." Ling Han smiled. When he walked over, he didn't hide his presence and talked to one guy for a while. The surrounding people naturally discovered him. What was there to be proud of? So many have died, you still want to escape? Senior Brother Ma sneered, swinging his rod to attack. Pong! The metal rod hit the large tree, which instantly snapped. The massive trunk toppled over, and even the ground vibrated slightly from the shock. Ling Han leapt carrying Hu Niu and landed nearby. His eyes had a shred of coldness as he said, "We're without grievances or hate, yet you're still trying to kill me. Can't blame us for being hurt. What if you raid us when we're healing our wounds? Wouldn't we be on the defensive? So please, you should just go die now." Senior Brother Ma said coldly. Ling Han laughed and then said, "What makes you so confident that you'll beat me?" Ha 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 ha. Senior Brother Ma and his companions laughed aloud. A mere martial artist in the first layer of element gathering tier. You think you can give us hell? As expected, my current status brings too much aggro. Ling Han shook his head and said, "I really don't want to act cool, but you three pigheads are someone I'm definitely capable of destroying." Impudence! One of them shot out. The blade shed a cold glare within their hand, slicing towards Ling Han. He was in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, and while he was heavily wounded, dealing with someone in the first layer of the element gathering tier definitely didn't require more than a single blow. Naturally, it was impossible for any accidents to occur. Therefore, Senior Brother Ma and the other person smiled happily and watched. Ling Han moved, unleashed his sword with a chong, and 6 flashes of sword chi flew out. What? 6 flashes of sword chi? Senior Brother Ma and the other guy cried out in surprise at the same time, but they immediately regained their composure. No matter, although 6 flashes of sword chi was certainly something alarming, Ling Han's tier was just too low. Even with 10 flashes of sword chi, it was impossible to make up for an entire 9 tiers difference. Pu, a glaring light washed over, and they saw that the flesh on the body of that martial artist in the first layer of the gushing spring tier was sliced into pieces, and when all of Ling Han's flashes of sword chi flushed over, the person completely turned into a bloody and mutilated mess. Fu *K. Senior Brother Ma and the other guy's jaws dropped, and their eyes became larger than a brass bell. This scene completely shattered their worldview. Someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier was instantly killed by the sword strike of a person in the first layer of the element gathering tier? Who would believe this? Even they who witnessed it with their own eyes could not believe it.
You're definitely not in the first layer of the element gathering tier.
Senior Brother Ma said through his teeth.
Ling Han smiled as he said, "Then how strong do you think I am?" Senior Brother Ma didn't know what to say. That aura was definitely that of the first layer of the element gathering tier, but after carefully examining it, it certainly was stronger than the normal cultivation of the first layer of the element gathering tier. But even if it was stronger by tenfold, it'd only be equivalent to the middle stage of element gathering tier. So how was it possible that he had the strength to instantly kill someone in the first layer of the gushing spring tier?
Whatever your cultivation is, you can only die, Senior Brother Ma roared.
His strength talisman was still in effect, and with the power of the late stage of the gushing spring tier, he was infinitely confident.
Hong! He came swinging his metal rod.
As its speed was too fast and its power too heavy, wherever the metal rod swept, air vortices formed.
Ling Han smiled slightly. His feet shifted, and his body instantly moved like a ghost.
If Senior Brother Ma was truly in the late stage of the gushing spring tier, then Ling Han would have ran at once, but his opponent powered up by relying on the strength talisman, and his speed was no faster. Besides, Senior Brother Ma suffered a heavy hit from the Fire-Eyed Bull's last strike, and his strength dropped drastically. His power under the strength talisman support did not drop by much, but his speed was much less than in his optimal condition.
How could he land a hit on Ling Han? Chapter 217. Eliminating with a single slash. Senior Brother Ma was roaring in rage. His opponent even had a child in his arms, yet he actually couldn't manage to do anything to him. This made him feel very depressed. Moreover, as time passed, he became even more anxious.
Firstly, a strength talisman could only last for about 10+ minutes, and secondly, he had indeed suffered heavy injuries, and there was a need for him to immediately treat his injuries. Otherwise, the longer they were left unattended, the more serious his wounds would become.
"Junior Brother Yang, cooperate with me and we'll take down this brat together," he called out.
Agreed. The other person also joined into the battle with his sword in hand.
Two elites of gushing spring tier were actually ganging up on a single martial artist of element gathering tier. If this was known to others, they would definitely be looked down on and disdained. However, these two men were obviously very shameless characters, and did not care about this fact any one bit. They only wanted to kill Ling Han as soon as possible. But to their shock, they discovered they could not possibly achieve it. Ling Han's figure was as slippery as a swimming fish, and they were completely unable to catch hold of him. They could only chase after him in vain and pointlessly waste their energy. And the more time passed, the worse the situation was for them.
"Brat, what kind of man are you to keep dodging? If you have the guts to, stand and face us directly."
Senior Brother Ma tried to provoke him.
"Are you an idiot?"
Ling Han humphed.
"You already said you are able to kill me in a single move, and I am still supposed to stand and face you directly?
Do you take me for an idiot, or are you the real idiot here?"
"Damn you!"
Senior Brother Ma howled in fury.
"However, I don't have the time to wait until you're exhausted, so receive a slash from me then."
Ling Han's face became solemn.
The sword intent of the mysterious 3000 circulating in his heart. He began to mull over this style. Instantly, an oppressive feeling as if a storm was about to arrive enveloped Senior Brother Ma and his last remaining companion.
"What kind of sword technique is this?"
Senior Brother Ma instantly looked shocked. In his eyes, it was as if Ling Han had become the center of the universe, and everything else in the surroundings had paled in color. "Why is that I can't even move my body?"
Junior Brother Yang was about to cry.
His opponent's sword was right about to strike him, yet he couldn't even move his body. Didn't that mean he could only wait for his death?
Ling Han smiled internally.
He had used his divine sense to freeze the two of them, which created the illusion that they were unable to move. This was an influence to their consciousness. Usually, as long as one had a strong enough will, he would naturally not be affected.
For example, Kan Yi.
With the focus and concentration he had on saber arts, even if Ling Han was still in heaven tier, he would still be unable to shake Kan Ye's will. However, the two of them, due to their heavy injuries, already had very weakened wills. They were then shocked by Ling Han's 6 flashes of sword chi, and astonished by the strange amount of power a martial artist merely in the first layer of element gathering tier had. Their wills were naturally very strongly affected. As a result, Ling Han instilled his influence into the sword stance of the 3 styles of black origin, leading them into thinking that they were unable to move. Mysterious 3000. Ling Han brandished his sword. Xiao xiao xiao. A few dozen flashes of light from the sword were shot out, solidifying into sharp blades that swiftly flew towards Senior Brother Ma and his accomplice. Due to the pressure of death, Senior Brother Ma and his accomplice managed to get from under the oppression of Ling Han's divine sense. At this time, there was no longer any time left for them to flee. They flourished and whirled their respective weapons in order to block as much of this attack as possible. Pang 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 pang. Every blade of origin power here was equivalent to a full-force attack from Ling Han. In other words, it was like there were over 20 Ling Hans ganging up on each of them. Who would be able to withstand such a barrage? They managed to parry and shatter a few blades of origin power, but there were even more blades of origin power that managed to pierce into their bodies and ripped at them with terrifying, destructive power. Ling Han flew past and twirled his sword. Pu pu. Instantly, 2 heads flew up into the sky before once again falling onto the ground, revealing the defiant and fearful faces of Senior Brother Ma and his accomplice. Ling Han panted and said, "No wonder that guy, the Sword Emperor, was so awesome. I have only grasped 1% of this one style, and I can already kill 2 elites of Gushing Spring tier." He looked pensive and thought, if the Heaven Sword sect still existed and found out that I learned the 3 styles of black origin, they probably won't spare me, right? Would a sect that could foster out a monster like the Sword Emperor have a Shattering Void tier warrior in their ranks? I had previously thought that there was no one in Shattering Void tier in this land, but now that I think about it, it may be that such powerful ultimate warriors preferred to keep to themselves and hid themselves away from the rest of the world. It would be best to use the 3 styles of black origin as little possible, only if it was a matter of life and death or if I can ensure that this secret will not be exposed to anyone else. Meet! When he had been engaged in his thoughts, Hunyo had already jumped out, and had started prancing around beside the fire-eyed bull. Though Ling Han had bought a considerable amount of demonic beast meat, but the majority was level 1 and there was only a few from level 2, what more level 3. Thus, the little girl was practically salivating by now. "You glutton!" Ling Han teased with a laugh. "Nyo is glutton." Hunyo nodded her head furiously, thinking that was a compliment. Ling Han laughed loudly, and began to deal with the fire-eyed bull. The strange fire kept transmitting its thoughts to him, impatiently wanting to refine and swallow those 2 eyeballs. He first started a fire, then sliced off one of the bull's legs and began to roast it over the fire. Meanwhile, he also dug out the bull's eyes and held them in his left hand. The strange fire gushed out and enveloped the eyeballs, which actually started shrinking at a very rapid pace. Just a few moments and they were turned into ash, whereas the strange fire ducked back into Ling Han's left hand and transmitted a thought that it had not eaten enough yet to Ling Han. "These 2 gluttons," Ling Han thought mockingly, as he appeased the strange fire, promising that he would look for more food for it in the future. In just a short while, the bull's leg was exuding a tempting aroma. Ling Han drew out a dagger, sliced off a few slabs of beef and placed them onto a plate. That was the good thing about having a spatial ring could still carry with him such impractical things, for they would not occupy much space anyways. Hunyo immediately began to eat happily. She was a typical glutton. She had not yet swallowed the first piece of meat, when her hand would stretch out towards the second. She stuffed her mouth as full as possible, so much that it was difficult even to chew. The whole body of a level 3 demonic beast was a treasure for the current Ling Han. The tough hide of the bull could be made into defensive equipment that even sharp weapons instilled with origin power would find difficult to penetrate. And the beef, bones, and tendons were all very nutritious food, able to strengthen and invigorate the body, comparable to some treasured items. Of course, the most precious were the eyes and the horns. However, the eyes had already been eaten by the strange fire, and only a pair of horns was left. They could be forged into weapons that had powerful destructive ability. Upon a closer look, there was a pattern of seals that looked like writing on the surface of the bull's horn. It was precisely these seals that had gifted the fire-eyed bull with such overwhelming destructive power. Otherwise, this pair of horns would only be harder than a normal bull's horns. While Ling Han continued to eat his beef, he tried to activate these seals. This was a very difficult thing to do. After all,
Each and every person had differing martial arts. What more when it was a completely different species? However, Ling Han was not any ordinary person. Soon, one of the seals lit up, then the second, and the third. A red light enveloped the horns, as if the bull's horns were burning. Ling Han gave them a light wave, and a tongue of flame shot out strongly from the bull's horn, drawing a line of burnt marks that were 3 inches deep on the ground. Chapter 218. Meeting Gu Fenghua again. So sharp. Ling Han nodded. If destructive power was the only thing in consideration here, this pair of bullhorns had surpassed the sword he was using now. Of course, if he was able to use a suitable spirit tool, then the destructive power at his disposal would definitely not be beneath this pair of bullhorns. Pop! Hunyao burped and patted her little tummy in satisfaction. She had really not eaten much today because the beef of the fire-eyed bull contained too much nutrition. Even she would not be able to take it if she had eaten too much. Ling Han was also very full. Though he had the ability of a martial artist in the first layer of Gushing Spring tier, he was still an element gathering tier in truth. Thus, the meat of a level 3 demonic beast was also extremely nutritious to him. Unfortunately, he had not brought any spiritual herbs with him. Otherwise, he would be able to make a pot of soup and allow the various essences to mingle. That was what a really nutritious meal would be like. He sat down and began to digest his meal, whereas Hunyao began to run around. This was one of her own methods to absorb nutrition. The other was naturally to sleep. After about 2 hours, Ling Han stood up and smiled. There has been a slight improvement to my muscles and blood vessels, whereas my cultivation has increased quite quickly. Obviously, the more precious an item was, the more it could help to improve one's base. Those that could only increase cultivation could only be considered scraps. If I eat some meat of the fire-eyed bull every day, and swallow some alchemical pills as well, I should be able to truly reach the peak of element gathering tier in about 10 days. Then I will break through to Gushing Spring tier and unravel the secrets of the Black Tower. After he had dealt with the rest of the fire-eyed bull, he stored everything in his spatial ring. The two of them then continued on their way to the ring-shaped mountain. On their journey, there was gradually more and more trees. There were even some villages, but they had been long abandoned, and there was no sign of life in them. There were even some villas in the villages. They were very luxuriously decorated. Unfortunately, they were completely deteriorated, because who knows how many people had come to plunder them within these few thousand years. So, even if they had once been in a perfectly good condition, they would have been dug up and turned upside down later on. It was said that the great clans of the 9 nations of the desolate north began to rise up after they first ventured into the Devil Sky Mystery Realm, and even managed to establish powerful nations, creating a base that endured for a few thousand years. There were always those who were not willing to give up, and still continued to hunt around in the village. Who knows, they might be really lucky and discover a treasure that everyone else had somehow missed. There were also those who had ill intentions and lay in ambush in the village in order to rob those who had actually managed to find something. In case of Ling Han and Hunyao, 1 adult and 1 child, they didn't even have any baggage on them, looking completely impoverished. Thus, they didn't actually encounter any ambushes. They advanced smoothly on their way, and after another few days, they had arrived at the foot of the ring-shaped mountain. Was this really a mountain? Ling Han raised his head to look up, and doubt appeared on his face. That was because the slope was much too steep. Rather than calling it a mountain, it looked more like a wall. But what kind of wall would be as tall as 1,000 feet? Was this the creation of an almighty warrior of shattering void tier? He sighed. He had never entered into a mystery realm in the past. Otherwise, with his cultivation level of heaven tier, he would definitely be able to investigate the truth behind this place. Because it was not easy to identify directions here, Ling Han and Hunyao circled around the mountain. Anyways, there were only 4 ravines here, so they would at most only have to walk a quarter of a circle. 2 days later, they had still not managed to reach the ravine. Instead, there appeared a small lake in front of them, and Hunyao instantly exclaimed about wanting to take a bath. Ling Han had a spatial ring, so he could stuff all his clothes, food, and necessities inside, but he couldn't possibly bring along even his bathwater and bathtub as well. That would occupy too much space. They had already been in the mystery realm for 5 days. Hunyao used to be filthy and hated bathing, But after hanging around with Lu Yutong and Li Si-chan for so many days, she grew to love bathing. Every day, she would shamelessly wash herself clean. What more after 5 days of not taking a bath? Let's see if it's safe or not first, Ling Han said. He feared that there might be some dangerous demonic beast in the lake, or perhaps even the lake itself was a huge danger.
With a splash, the lake water split open and a slender figure that had an astonishing beauty appeared.
Ling Han hurriedly pushed Hunyo down and sat, thinking that he was probably going to get styes. He actually accidentally saw a woman bathing. He lowered his voice and said, "Nyo, let's wait for a while." Hunyo did not understand, and her small mouth was instantly pouting to express her displeasure. There were bushes all around the lake which provided very good cover. When the adult and child sitting on the ground, there was no need to worry that they would be discovered. However, after a while, there was a sha, and the bushes shook. A man actually appeared. The guy's backside was protruding, and he was half lying on his stomach on the ground. He kept looking in the direction of the lake, and crawled around in the meantime, seeming to be switching to different angles. As he peeped, he salivated and mumbled, "Indeed, one needs to change to different angles to admire a beauty to really enjoy it." Ling Han took a look and could not help having a strange expression as he said, "Brother pervert, why have we met again?" The man was the self-proclaimed magnificent pervert, Gu Fenghua. Caught red-handed, Gu Fenghua almost jumped up in his hiding spot. He turned around and spared Ling Han a glance, and a puzzled expression appeared on his face as he said, "How do you know I am a pervert?
Could it be that my perversion is already as luminous as the sun, and has reached the level where others can spot it with one glance? Brother pervert does not remember me anymore?"
Ling Han asked with a smile. Gu Fenghua stared at Ling Han for a while, then shook his head repeatedly and said, "You're not a beauty, so how could I possibly remember you? Could it be that we share common interests?" His eyes lit up and he pointed in the direction of the lake. "Brother pervert is talking so loudly. Are you not scared you will alert that young miss?" Ling Han asked, smiling. Gu Fenghua hurriedly covered his mouth and said, "You almost spoiled my big business."
If that girl had discovered me, then wouldn't my efforts of tailing her all this while and taking advantage of her moment of distraction to scatter a handful of itchy powder on her, forcing her to have no choice but to take a bath, be completely wasted? Ling Han's mouth twitched as he said, "I am very deeply impressed with your determination, brother pervert."
"You are indeed very perverted." Gu Fenghua looked very pleased with himself, and could not hold himself back from laughing out. Moreover, his laughter was getting louder and louder, and very hearty too.
Whew! The girl who had been bathing in the lake was naturally able to hear such a loud commotion.
Shua, a white figure flashed past, and she had already dived into the bushes. She stretched out a delicate hand and instantly grabbed the clothing that she had hung on them. After only a while, a flash of sword chi shot over, and the slash scattered sliced pieces of leaves flew all over. A young girl also arrived in a leap. There were still some droplets of water dripping down her hair, and her pretty face was filled with killing intent. Ling Han picked up Hunyo and leaped away together with Gu Fenghua, avoiding this strike. "Is every time you peek such a massacre, brother pervert?" Ling Han asked with a smile. "Hey, don't wrong me. I am only a pervert, not a bad man. A thing like peeping has naturally nothing to do with me." Gu Fenghua said seriously, waving his hands around fiercely, pushing away all blame. "Yo, if you two big brothers like me, then just say it. Seeing as big brothers are so handsome, I may not be unwilling to have some fun with big brothers, so what need is there for you to peep so secretly at me?" The girl did not get any results with her attack, and actually withdrew her murderous air, her expression all smiles. She was not a virtuous girl. Chapter 219. Implicated. Hearing the girl's words, Ling Han's impression of Gu Fenghua instantly improved a considerable amount. Using tricks to make a girl have no choice but to bathe, and take advantage of the chance to peek on her. This should have been a very despicable act. But from the moment the girl opened her mouth, he was sure that she was no decent girl, which proved that Gu Fenghua still had his boundaries and had not used those kinds of tricks on decent, honorable girls. As the saying goes, even thieves have their code of conduct. Though this was quite a bit different, but it was a kind of principle after all. A pervert with principles. Ling Han covered Nyo-Nyo's ears and said, "Does your family know you are so unrestrained, miss?"
Giggle. The girl trembled lightly with laughter and cast a coy glance at Ling Han, then said, "Big brother, could it be that you're interested in my master? Though my master is quite advanced in years, but she's still very attractive. Exactly the type of woman that a young man like you has the least resistance to."
Ling Han shuddered, turned to Gu Fenghua and said, "Pervert, this is your problem, you solve it." After saying these words, he picked up Hunyo and walked towards the lake. Now that the lake was no longer occupied, Hunyo naturally could have her bath.
Yeah.
Hunyo jumped down from Ling Han's arms and completely removed all her clothing in a few moments. With a splash, she had jumped into the lake and began to play to her heart's desire. "Ling Han, come play with Nyo," she said to Ling Han, acting spoiled. Ling Han waved his hand with a smile.
He had no desire to get undressed in front of others, especially when that woman was so shockingly unrestrained in her behavior.
Pang, pang, pang. Soon, sounds of battle came from the bushes, and after a while, Gu Fenghua came out with a swollen face that was not much different from a pig's head. However, there was no sign left of that girl. Ling Han was curious and asked, "That woman is only in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, so why is Brother Pervert cutting such a sorry figure?" Gu Fenghua threw a disdainful look at Ling Han and said, "A good man does not fight with a woman." Ling Han's mouth twitched. So that was why he had been so harshly beaten up. But that girl should have found out that Gu Fenghua's ability was far above her. Thus, she had only given him a beating and ran off to avoid inciting Gu Fenghua's killing intent. In this mystery realm, the benefits of having a good background were much smaller. As long as you weren't caught, who would know if you had committed murder? Ha 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 ha, why has your cultivation level fallen to the 1st layer of element gathering tier? Gu Fenghua suddenly laughed. Then he scratched his head. When other people cultivate, they become stronger and stronger. But the more you cultivate, the more you regress. You indeed have some potential to be a pervert. Ling Han could not help but shake his head. Looks like if he did not break through to gushing spring tier, his present condition would attract a lot of aggression towards him. That's odd. Though your cultivation level is lower, but why is it that the feeling you give me is even more oppressive than before? Gu Fenghua said, looking a bit baffled, and scratched his head, seeming very puzzled. Haha, you are indeed a pervert. In the end, he credited everything to his being a pervert. After all, as long as he was a pervert, anything odd could be easily explained away by him as being perverted. Ling Han did not want to be stuck in confusion about this point, so he asked, "Didn't you go back into the mountains to cultivate? Why have you come here again?" "On my way back, I've encountered a goddess and kept trying to hit on her. In the end, I ran into this place somehow, and was separated from that goddess." Gu Fenghua suddenly startled, then said, "I won't chat with you anymore. I still have to go find my dream girl." Xiao. He broke into a run, and in a mere moment, there was no sign of him left. Ling Han shook his head, and drew some clear water from the lake to wash his face. Hunyo did not find it that fun playing alone in the water. Thus, she only bathed herself clean, then ran onto the shore. Acting spoiled, she had Ling Han dry her and help her wear her clothes before she finally smiled sweetly. The two of them continued on their way, and witnessed much bloodshed throughout. This place also contained people of the 9 nations. It was possible that there might be some who were not randomly transported when they entered, which meant that the people of a nation may appear in the same big area. However, as they get closer to the ring-shaped mountain, since there were only 4 ravines that connected into the mountain's depths, many of the people from different countries began to encounter each other. Ling Han's principle was, "If you don't mess with me, I would be too lazy to bother with you either." As someone who used to be an ultimate elite of heaven tier, he was very indifferent to the idea of belonging to a country. "Brother, help me." However, he had not managed to maintain his attitude of minding his own business and staying away from trouble for long when he saw a young man swiftly racing towards him from the wilderness. There were 2 middle-aged men wielding sabers chasing after him, wearing fierce expressions. One glance was enough for Ling Han to know that this was an attempted robbery and murder. It was no wonder that this young man had fixed his eye on him. He was dressed very richly, his clothing was made using high-quality silk, and the various ornaments hanging from his clothes were all expensive. He was obviously a member of a rich family, and due to the random teleportation,
He was separated from the elders of his clan when he entered this place.
And he was only in the 5th layer of element gathering tier. That was like an idiot carrying gold and parading around in the streets. It would be strange if he had not attracted others coveting his wealth.
This young man acted as if he was a drowning man who had managed to grasp onto a life-saving straw, and he did not care even if Ling Han looked younger than himself and had a little girl by his side. He simply ran towards Ling Han while screaming loudly at him. When it was a matter of life and death, his speed miraculously became quite a bit faster than normal, and very soon, he ran behind Ling Han and pointed at the 2 men that had chased him as he said, "Brother, help me chase them off, and I will definitely reward you handsomely."
The 2 pursuers stopped.
One wielded a saber while the other held a sword, and they both gave Ling Han a glance before laughing loudly.
And here I was thinking that it was some kind of powerful character. So it's just a little brat in the 1st layer of element gathering tier.
What?
The young man exclaimed in shock. Initially, he had thought that since Ling Han dared to bring a little girl with him and walk around so casually in this wilderness, he had to be extremely powerful. He had never thought that Ling Han was only in the 1st layer of element gathering tier and was much weaker than even him. Ling Han could not help but sigh. After merging the 9 nuclei, his cultivation level seemed to have dropped drastically. Not only his friends worried about him, but even others would look at him in disdain out in the wilderness. What a depressing thing. That's fine. We'll just kill them both.
The man armed with a saber looked fiercely at them.
Shwa!
His words had just left his mouth when he quickly shot forward, raising his sword to slash at Ling Han.
Ling Han merely raised his hand casually and the man's wrist fell into his hand.
The man was only in the 9th layer of element gathering tier, but even if they were at the same cultivation level with Ling Han's 5-element origin nuclei, he would have several times the power of this man. What more when he had broken through to the 10th layer and had power comparable to the 1st layer of gushing spring tier.
The saber wielder struggled but felt as if it was a metal chain that was holding onto his hand, and could not manage to get free at all. Fatty, what's wrong with you? What's so fun about playing with a little guy? Kill him quickly. The man holding a sword urged. The saber wielder was already breaking out into a cold sweat.
In front of him, Ling Han's face was still very calm, and he even had a sliver of a smile on his lips. However, it was precisely this smile that made him feel a coldness that seemed to penetrate into his body.
Da. His teeth were endlessly clicking together as he said, "Old Zhang, come quickly and help me. This brat is strange." What's so strange? He's just a piece of trash in the 1st layer of element gathering tier. The swordsman said disdainfully. Fatty, this is not funny in the slightest. Kill off those 2 brats quickly. Chapter 220. Vicious and Merciless. Reverie _
Ling Han casually threw a slap, and Pa, the fatty wielding the saber, was sent flying.
Ha! The swordsman, old Zhang's expression stiffened. He thought that the fatso was showing off, but no matter how he showed off, there was no reason to take a slap from the other party. It instantly raised his vigilance. This kid is strange, the saber-wielding fatty said as he got up, stroking his hurting face. Strange where? Old Zhang asked.
His strength is strangely large. When he held onto my wrist just now, I couldn't even get free, the saber-wielding fatso said truthfully with his face was on fire. If he tried to lie to save his face, it might get them both killed.
Could it be an inborn gift like surprising physical power? The sword-wielding old Zhang speculated. It should be so. His presence is definitely just that of the 1st layer of the element gathering tier, the saber-wielding fatso said with complete certainty. Both men stared fiercely at Ling Han. Kid, we originally had no grievances or hate, but if you must try to be brave, then it's you seeking your own death. Ling Han sighed as he never thought about helping. Adventuring here meant having resolve to face dangers, but who let that the youngster bump right into him with 2 middle-aged men who couldn't wait to attack them on his tail? The fact remained that he looked easy to bully, and now that they've gotten a small lesson, they were beginning to take him seriously. Hunyo, the skinny one is up to you, Ling Han said with a smile. He might as well let Hunyo practice. The little girl had the gushing spring tier guy from the Wu clan running in circles the other time, so the guy in the 9th layer of the element gathering tier before them shouldn't pose much danger to her. Good. Hunyo immediately jumped out. Other than eating, fighting and such were her favorite activity, except they had been in the imperial city so far, thus Ling Han wouldn't let her fight. What? The sword-wielding old Zhang almost got a crooked nose from anger. He let a 5-6-year-old little girl fight him? He couldn't help but conceive a wicked idea. He was going to split the little girl in two and use her blood-soaked corpse to tell Ling Han what were the results of infuriating him. Kid, let's spar a bit more. The saber-wielding fatso flourished his saber. This time, I definitely won't underestimate you. Those words implied that he lost earlier only because he was careless. Ling Han smiled and said, "Your face still hurts, right?" You! The saber-wielding fatty was instantly angered out of embarrassment. That slap certainly hit him hard, so much that it still stung. Since you know the pain, why can't you remember and learn? Ling Han shook his head and laughed. You are already a dead man since you unleashed your saber against me anyways. It matters not if you can't remember. Bullsh! T! The saber-wielding fatso bellowed. With both his hands holding the saber's handle, he fiercely erupted with strong attacks. Large demon heaven saber, splitting skies and shattering ground. I, Zhu Qiankuan, am invincible. Pooh! He hadn't finished his war cry, yet his stomach had already received a heavy kick and his entire being instantly flew like a cannonball. Pung! He fell heavily onto the ground and shrunk like a shrimp, his face convulsing. Ling Han pulled back his leg. In this attack, he used 20 to 30% of his strength, but for an opponent in the 9th layer of the element gathering tier, that much power was enough to be lethal. However, this fatso was so fat that the power was redistributed by large amounts of fat. Unexpectedly, the kick didn't destroy his internal organs, but the skin on his entire body cracked under the immense shock, instantly turning him into a tragic blood-soaked man. Even though his life was saved, the fatso could only groan, no longer having a shred of battle power. On the other side, Hunyo was playing very contently. Her cultivation progress was absurdly fast, and she was now at the 7th layer of the element gathering tier. She went head-on with the old sword user fearlessly, exhibiting a speed advantage over him and circling behind her opponent for a surprise attack. All this while, old Zhang could not even land a single attack on her. Shwa shwa shwa. Hunyo's hands were like tiger claws, and after several swings, old Zhang's back was covered in fresh blood. The blood stimulated Hunyo's murderous nature even further as she bared her teeth halfway and attacked even more ferociously. Behind Ling Han, the youngster stared with his mouth agape. A youngster in the 1st layer of the element gathering tier wasted an opponent in the 9th layer of the element gathering tier with a kick, and a 5-6-year-old little girl completely suppressed her opponent. What sort of monsters were these two? After a moment's effort, Hunyo slapped the sword user old Zhang unconscious and laughed as she returned to Ling Han's side, reverting to her look of a cute and pure little princess. Pa pa! At this time, the youngster used a rock to bash the fatso and old Zhang's heads into mush to make sure they died. Even heaven-tier warriors wouldn't survive that. Ling Han couldn't help but look at him twice more. This youngster was quite vicious. Thank you, benefactor, for upholding justice and saving me. The youngster quickly threw away the rock, and with an expression filled with humility, he said, I'm called Yang Ming, I'm from Stone Country. Please don't blame me. I was hunted down over a long way and almost lost my life. I had to at least do that much to vent the hate in my heart. The two were mere robbers. If they died, then that was it. Ling Han did not care about them. What surprised him was Yang Ming's expression when he set about finishing them off without a shred of emotion, appearing utterly cold-blooded. Benefactor, could I tag along? I was separated from my family when I came in, but I believe I can definitely meet them at the Central Hall. When that time comes, my family's seniors will definitely repay you generously. Yang Ming looked sincerely at Ling Han. Unsure of how long it'd be before reaching the canyon ahead, with multiple dangers ahead, it'd naturally be safer to cling to someone strong. Ling Han smiled as he looked at the other. While this guy was talking all this drivel, he just wanted him as a bodyguard. Was not bad at hoaxing people. Yang Ming saw that Ling Han was unmoved, then said unwillingly, Benefactor, you know why those two were hunting me down? Because you look like a fat sheep? Ling Han laughed. That's only half. Yang Ming shook his head and continued. In the village ahead, I was very lucky to have found an ancient record, but I soon bumped into those two and was hunted down by them. I placed the ancient record on top of a dried-up tree. As long as Benefactor promises to protect me along the way, I'm willing to give you the ancient record. Ancient record. Ling Han pondered and said, "What's that ancient record about?" I only briefly looked at it. The ancient record should be an indigenous inhabitant's diary, recording the details of the ring-shaped mountain, Yang Ming said, paused, then continued, "There's also a map inside." The latter words moved Ling Han. He was very interested in the depths of the ring-shaped mountain, wanting to investigate its secrets. "All right, let's get that ancient record." Ling Han nodded. Yang Ming exulted at this reply. Normally, a cultivator's like for books was related to arts and skills. They naturally would not glance at other books more than once. He was only making a bet, and unexpectedly, Ling Han actually gave him a promise. Chapter 221. Logbook. Reverie _ They walked a bit on the outer ring of the ring-shaped mountain. Sure enough, Yang Ming took out an ancient record from a dried-up tree. The cover had almost completely rotted away, and it wasn't hidden very well. Half of it showed. Obviously, Yang Ming only hid it behind the tree trunk hastily at the time and shoved in the ancient record offhandedly, then immediately left. Hence it was hidden so sloppily. "Young Master Han here." Yang Ming submitted the ancient record respectfully with his head slightly lowered, a hint of unwillingness that was hard to perceive in his eyes. For normal people, this ancient record was worth nothing, but for some, it could be priceless. Ling Han took it without hesitation. On their way, he told Yang Ming his name, hearing benefactor, and such all the time was uncomfortable. He started to leaf through it in front of Yang Ming without being evasive. This was certainly a predecessor's logbook. The part at the start recorded some trifling matters. The person was called Xiao Ding, who was once a chief that managed a village, living a quiet life. Xiao family had lived here for many generations, but a change happened in Xiao Ding's generation. The whole village was driven away from the mystery realm, but Xiao Ding stayed behind with an act of great deception. He disobeyed the orders of one called Demon Master at the time, and entered the depths of the ring-shaped mountain, wanting to know why they were being expelled. Relying on his understanding of the land, he avoided several barriers, which enabled him to enter the depths. However, he was unable to enter the depths of the core area as a mysterious power infected him, making him feel like he wasn't himself anymore. He immediately ran, but it was too late. By the time he escaped and reached his village, he was already unable to control himself, barely able to record what he experienced in the depths of the mountains. The diary ended there. He probably died. Xiao Ding recorded various restrictions, recording everything in immense detail. This was probably because he was afraid he'd forget something. In the end, he conjectured that a terrifying existence was suppressed within Devil's Sky Mystery Realm, and the central hall was a backup array that reinforced the restrictions through blood sacrifice. Perhaps it existed since the very distant past, but problems occurred in his generation. Since the people in the mystery realm had all left, then what were the restrictions for? There was only one possibility: within was suppressed something of ominous origin. Ling Han closed the logbook and sunk into contemplation. From the looks of it, this mystery realm was very stable, so it shouldn't be a problem with the mystery realm itself like it breaking down. Then why were the people driven away back then? In the past, a blood zombie appeared in Devil's Sky Mystery Realm, and Xiao Ding mentioned ominous origin in the logbook, believing that here was imprisoned something terrible and evil. Could the two be related? At the time, was it because the blood zombie's appearance that resulted in everyone's expulsion? Mystery realms were created by shattering void tier cultivators, but it didn't mean that every mystery realm had such a formidable person overseeing it. If shattering void tier cultivators couldn't shatter the void to enter into divine plane, then they too would die of old age. Perhaps, in the depth of this mountain were large amounts of blood zombies that required the power of a shattering void tier cultivator to subdue? However, inside Devil's Sky Mystery Realm, there was no longer such a formidable cultivator. Therefore, they were forced to leave, leaving an empty space. The mystery realm to trap that thing. "Young Master Han, can we depart?" Yang Ming carefully asked. Ling Han nodded and said, "Go." The three set out, walking forward for half a day and finally seeing a large ravine from afar. It was as if a heavenly saber split the ring-shaped mountain, literally splitting open a seam in the massive mountain, which was as if connected to the sky. The fracture that descended from the sky was terrifyingly surprising. Even Ling Han could feel a hint of saber intent. In previous years, There had to exist an exceptionally strong cultivator who struck 4 times, cutting the ring-shaped mountain into 4 sections. Shattering Void Tear. It definitely was a Shatter Void Tear cultivator, Ling Han thought to himself.
In his former life, even he didn't have such might. Only the legendary Shattering Void Tear cultivators boasted such remarkable abilities that a sliver of saber intent could remain even after an unknown amount of years, not eroded by the time.
Too terrifying. A saber intent that could cross an eternity was unheard of.
Although the ravine was in view, it was further than it appeared. Approaching it still required passing a long stretch of road.
Since their target already appeared in their sight, they naturally had enough enthusiasm to speed up. Ah! A tragic scream came from afar. Apparently, a fight was going on, a very usual thing here. In a flash, 6 people, each with a sword, scuttled out from inside the jungle on the right. Each of them was as if they'd saw a ghost, terrified, only knowing to bolt for their lives. Xiao, a black shadow passed through extremely quickly, and with a jump, it already caught up to a person, waving its hand toward the person's back of the head. That person seemed to have no more courage left, not even daring to resist, just escaping frantically. But they didn't know it was impossible for them to match up to the black shadow's speed. Instantly, their head took a hit, and with a paw, the entire head was in smithereens and hot blood gushed out. A terrifying and disgusting scene appeared. The black shadow lunged on top of the body to suck the man's blood and gnaw on his flesh. Hiss! Blood zombie! Ling Han frowned, automatically thinking about that evil thing. Wrong, 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 this isn't a blood zombie, but a second-tier bronze-armored combi. A youngster in black walked out the jungle. His face was dead pale without a hint of blood, giving off a feeling of a poltergeist in broad daylight. In his hand were 3 metal chains that were drawn tightly, as if tied to something heavy, but which was hidden inside the jungle and therefore out of sight. 1,000 Corpse Sect? Ling Han knit his brows. What, you actually know of 1,000 Corpse Sect? The youngster in black stared at Ling Han, revealing a strong murderous aura. Ling Han sneered, revealing a disgusted expression. 1,000 Corpse Sect was an unparalleled evil force. People from this sect weren't strong themselves, but each refined a strong cultivator's corpse, then known as corpse soldier, commanding it like their own limbs. Its battle power was exceedingly shocking. The corpse soldiers were separated into 3 large stages, which were bronze-armored corpse, silver-armored corpse, and gold-armored corpse. Each stage was further divided into first level, second level, and third level, for a total of 9 levels that corresponded to the 9 tiers in martial arts from body refining tier to heaven tier. Where were the corpse soldiers of 1,000 Corpse Sect from? Of course from stealing the corpses of martial artists. If the martial artist's strength was strong while living, then the corpse soldier made from his body would be comparable in power. A third-level gold-armored corpse could even compare to a formidable heaven-tier cultivator. In order to steal a strong corpse, 1,000 Corpse Sect could be said as deranged and frenzied, not only digging up ancient tombs, but even stealing the corpses of strong cultivators buried not long ago. Consequently, this sect brought disgust to an overwhelming majority, and was once attacked by a coalition. Ling Han assumed that 1,000 Corpse Sect was annihilated. Unexpectedly, its disciple came running out now. Chapter 222. 1,000 Corpse Sect. The black-robed young man stared at Ling Han. This young man could not possibly exceed 18 years old in age, and was only in the first layer of element gathering tier. Then how was it possible that he would immediately think of the 1,000 Corpse Sect when he heard the words, bronze-armored corpse? Strange. His name was Rong Xian, and he bore a blood feud on his shoulders. He was forced into desperate straits by another, but then there appeared a huge turnaround in his life. He had obtained the inheritance of the 1,000 Corpse Sect and became the heir of the sect even after it had vanished for so many generations. To obtain his vengeance, he dug up the skeletal remains of one of the ancestors of his enemy's clan, refined them to become his corpse soldier and eliminated the entirety of his enemy's clan. He had obtained his revenge, but he had also fallen captive to this feeling of being mighty. Not only had he not given up on this twisted path, he had instead ventured further and further along it. He began to cultivate his own corpse soldiers and search for new corpses to likewise transform and develop them. Young man, you know too much. Rong Xian pointed,
And that corpse soldier that had been devouring blood and flesh immediately stood up and stared at Ling Han and the rest.
This was an old corpse of unknown age. The flesh around its chest was long rotted, revealing the bones inside.
However, the flesh on its head, hands, and feet was quite well preserved and only half rotted. But this only made it even more terrifying as lumps of flesh were just hanging there, faintly revealing the white of the bones underneath. It was terrifying enough to scare anyone with lesser bravery to death. The corpse soldier had of course lost all sentience. However, after being refined, it was equivalent to it having gained a second life. Though it was only left with the instinctive need to devour blood and flesh in order to strengthen itself. Now that its meal had been interrupted, it was naturally enraged, and moaned at Ling Han and the others. Its chin made a ba-da-da-da sound, as if it was about to fall off at any moment, making for an extremely terrifying sight.
Kill them! Rong Huanxian issued his command.
Xiao, that corpse soldier instantly leaped over, charging towards Ling Han and the others.
A mere second-tier bronze-armored corpse. Ling Han humphed.
His sword left its scabbard and stabbed towards that corpse soldier. With a ting, the blade scraped against the bones in the chest of the corpse soldier, creating a line of fiery sparks. The bones of the corpse soldier actually remained unscathed, which was outside of Ling Han's expectations.
Ha 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 ha.
The second-tier bronze-armored corpse soldier has just about consumed enough flesh and blood and is about to evolve to the third tier. So how could it be so easily injured by a piece of trash in the first layer of element gathering tier like you?
Rong Huanxian said coldly, making no move to interfere. In truth, he was in gushing spring tier.
If he decided to make a move, then he would definitely be much stronger than the second-tier bronze-armored corpse.
Shua, that corpse soldier stretched out a clawed hand towards Ling Han's heart. Its movements were vicious and deadly.
Ling Han humphed, and his figure swayed, actually avoiding that corpse soldier and coming face to face with Rong Huanxian. Then I will, he jumped high up directly. His sword slashed out, kill you. 6 flashes of sword chi appeared in a dance towards him.
This slash was lithe and graceful, and had completely exceeded Rong Huanxian's imagination. How could it have possibly circled around a second-tier bronze-armored corpse and appeared right in front of him?
When he snapped out of it, that sword together with the might of 6 flashes of sword chi had appeared right in front of him.
One had to understand that although Ling Han appeared to be only in the first layer of element gathering tier, his real ability was on the level of the first layer of gushing spring tier. Moreover, his battle prowess was even a few more battle stars above that. How could his attack be so easily blocked by a mere second-tier bronze-armored corpse? Rong Huanxian had paid the price for his underestimation of Ling Han.
But he was also a person who had crawled out of desperate straits and had a formidable will of his own. In the face of danger, he had instead become extremely calm. He suddenly opened his mouth and released a shrill whistle.
Wang wang wang.
He actually sprayed out a puff of black smoke from his mouth, which transformed into an ancient letter that blocked the power of the slash, as if it had transformed into a shield. Pang, the might of the sword had reached its target, yet it continued to release muffled sounds, as it was actually being melted by that black smoke. However, that ancient letter was also disappearing slowly. By the time the sword chi was completely destroyed, that ancient letter also swiftly vanished. Rong Huanxian had already retreated 30 feet away. A faint flush had appeared on his face and he looked a little bit more healthier than before, but the killing intent in his eyes was also considerably stronger, as if he wanted to swallow Ling Han whole.
Source Corpse Chi.
Ling Han gave a flourish of his sword, and said with a little bit of pity, I never thought that a mere martial artist in the 5th layer of gushing spring tier like you would have managed to form Source Corpse Chi.
Otherwise, he would have used the 3 styles of black origin rather than attacking so casually like he had done just now. You even know about Source Corpse Chi? Rong Huanxian appeared to be extremely shocked. Ling Han had guessed that he was the heir to the 1,000 Corpse sect through the appearance of the bronze-armored corpse. This was still easy to accept, because the 1,000 Corpse sect had been very well known in the past, so they must have left behind a considerable amount of inheritance. However, Source Corpse Chi. This was the secret technique of the 1,000 Corpse sect. If it was not someone who was extremely familiar with the 1,000 Corpse sect, there was no way he would know about it. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, You are already about to die anyways, so what's the point of spouting so much nonsense? Rong Huanxian looked enraged at this. He was an elite in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier. He had only fallen to Ling Han's attack previously because he had not expected that Ling Han would be so powerful. So how could he possibly make the same mistake a second time? You are indeed a bit strange. You are obviously in the 1st layer of Element Gathering tier, yet your ability is comparable to the 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier. He nodded in admission, then smirked coldly. But I am in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier, and it would be extremely easy for me to subdue you. Is that so? When Ling Han had been in the 4th layer of Element Gathering tier, he had not cowered in front of an elite of the 1st layer of Gushing Spring tier. Now that he was in the 10th layer of Element Gathering tier, he would naturally not fear a battle with an opponent in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier. Since a 2nd-tier bronze armored corpse can do nothing against you, then what about a 3rd-tiered one? Ronghuan Xian laughed. He pulled sharply with his right hand. Chung, chung, chung. The crisp sound of chains was heard, as if something heavy was being dragged out, and shockingly, there appeared 3 copper coffins. 3 corpses. Ling Han's eyes turned apprehensive, and he could not help but frown. I've never thought you'd actually manage to cultivate 3 corpses. Every disciple of the 1,000 Corpse sect used corpse soldiers as their main weapon, and in theory, the more corpse soldiers one had, the better it was. But in truth, there was a limited number of corpse soldiers that could be controlled by every disciple. Because after the corpse soldier had been successfully refined, it was equivalent to having obtained a second life. Though it was only left with bloodthirsty instincts, it was also violent and vicious, so how could it be willing to remain under the control of another? The disciples of the 1,000 Corpse sect needed to use their source corpse chi to control the corpse soldiers, but it was extremely difficult to form source corpse chi. Thus, there was of course a limit to the number of corpse soldiers one could control. Ordinarily, those in Element Gathering tier could only control 1, those in Gushing Spring tier could control 2, and only when one reached Spiritual Ocean tier could he control 3. Ronghuan Xian was only in the 5th layer of Gushing Spring tier, yet he had somehow cultivated 3 corpse soldiers. This was extremely strange. Ling Han was shocked, and Ronghuan Xian was even more astonished, because Ling Han was even aware of the limitations of cultivating corpse soldiers. The reason why he could cultivate 3 corpses was because he had obtained the whole inheritance of the 1,000 Corpse sect, which included a prized treasure. This was what allowed him to cultivate an additional corpse soldier in Gushing Spring tier, and as his cultivation level advanced, the number of corpse soldiers he would be able to control would increase further and further, and be double the number any ordinary disciple of 1,000 Corpse sect would be capable of controlling. He humphed and declared, "You are extremely strange and I must eliminate you." He clapped a hand onto the copper coffin in the middle, and pang! The lid of the coffin was instantly flung away as yet another corpse soldier leaped out of the coffin. 3rd-tier bronze armored corpse, he declared haughtily. Chapter 223. Silver Armored Corpse. Reverie _ Ling Han looked at the 3rd-tier bronze armored corpse, frowning slightly. He might not be able to defeat a 3rd-tier bronze armored corpse, but it wouldn't be able to kill him, either. The key was that his opponent was pulling on 3 caskets. In other words, there was still 1 corpse soldier that didn't appear. Another bronze armored corpse, or a silver armored corpse. Even a 1st-tier silver armored corpse was equivalent to a spiritual ocean tier cultivator. Ling Han was freakishly strong, but not so to the degree of being able to fight a spiritual ocean tier head-on with brute force. Besides, corpse soldiers couldn't feel, did not fear death nor being hurt, and unless their head was blown up, they'd never lose their battle capability, making them extremely hard to deal with. More importantly, corpse soldiers came from refinement. During this process, a corpse soldier's body became extremely durable, comparable to cast metal materials of the same tier. How would he break through it? Thus, to completely kill a corpse soldier, one needed to surpass the corpse by an entire tier to shatter it completely through overwhelming power. Ling Han's power right now was equivalent to the 1st layer of the Gushing Spring tier, insufficient to take care of even a 3rd-tier bronze armored corpse, not to mention a silver armored corpse. Besides, even if he could instantly kill Ronghuan Xian, corpse soldiers wouldn't die because the puppeteer was dead. On the contrary, they'd break away from control and kill based on their instincts. However, Ronghuan Xian was in the 5th layer of the Gushing Spring tier. Not easy to kill anyway. Ling Han cracked a smile and said, "Inside your 3rd casket, don't tell me there's a silver armored corpse."
Instantly, Rong Huanxian's expression changed slightly, and he sneered as he said, "You know quite a bit about the Thousand Corpse sect." Ling Han said no more and immediately bolted, grabbing Hunyo with the left hand and carrying Yang Ming in the right hand. Xiao xiao xiao. In an instant they turned into a small black dot. Sure enough, there was a silver-armored corpsito hell with fighting. Ah! Rong Huanxian was dumbfounded, then let out a sky-shaking angry roar. He completely didn't expect Ling Han to run so decisively. Good for nothing. Good for nothing. He yelled at the two corpse soldiers in anger. However, corpse soldiers would only commence battle after he gave them the command to. Otherwise, if they had their own intentions, they'd probably kill him first and eat his flesh and blood completely. Humph. After a while he settled down and said to himself, "It's nothing, that guy will definitely go to the central hall. I'll kill everyone there, and my 3 corpse soldiers will all level up. I hear that there are blood zombies here. Their battle power is comparable to flower blossom tier cultivators, if I can get 3 of those. Hee hee. The blood zombie only appears when the blood sacrifice is insufficient. If I kill everyone in the central hall, then the blood zombie will definitely appear." Ha 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 ha. He kept laughing maniacally. Only after Ling Han ran nearly 50 kilometers at a stretch did he stop, offhandedly throwing Yang Ming to the side and placing Hunyo down. Yang Ming was probably never treated in such a rough way. The veins on his neck popped out and he made a furious face. But as he thought about the difference in strength between him and Ling Han, he immediately suppressed his anger. "Young Master Han, the ravine is right ahead. Let's go," he said impatiently. Ling Han nodded. His dantian was unusually large. After he ran 50 kilometers at a stretch. He only used up nearly 10% of his origin power, which could be quickly recovered by taking a second-level return origin pill. If people were to see it, they'd definitely scold him for squandering money. Return origin pills were definitely used during battle, because normally one would meditate to recover origin power, and where would one get the time to do that during a battle? Ling Han was overbearingly rich and least lacking in medicinal pills, eating them casually. They were certainly closer to the ravine. In a few minutes at most, they'd be able to walk to the entrance. Ling Han. From afar, someone waved at them, and quite a few people were there. After a close look, it was Qi Yongyi and the others. Ling Han sped up his footsteps as he walked over, only to see that other than Li Si-chan, Guang Yuan, and Li Hao and his partner, everyone who journeyed together earlier was here. Who is this? They looked at Yang Ming. This humble one is Yang Ming. No one important. Yang Ming hurriedly paid obeisance to the others, acting very humbly. However, when his eyes swept past Lu Yutong, a breathtaking expression flashed across his face, and he couldn't help but look twice more, finally lowering his head. "This isn't a place to talk. We go in first," Ling Han said seriously. Rong Huanxian could appear from behind at any time. Rong Huanxian himself wasn't a big deal, but the key was that he brought a silver-armored corpse. In a place where spiritual ocean tier cultivators ruled, the silver-armored corpse was almost an invincible being. Everyone saw his solemn expression and none opposed, as they were all waiting for Ling Han to arrive anyways. Since the man of the hour arrived, why not leave? On the way, Ling Han explained the incident regarding Rong Huanxian. Hearing it, everyone's hair stood up. Corpse soldier. They've never heard of it. What the hell was that? The blood zombies here. Could they be corpse soldiers? Bailey Tingyun guessed. Possibly. The others nodded in succession. This would explain why Rong Huanxian appeared. Perhaps there was Thousand Corpse Sect's inheritance here, and Rong Huanxian was here to take it. An inheritance like that, even if it's god tier, I wouldn't want it. Li Dongyu shook his head like a rattledrum. The others also shook their heads in succession. Nurturing a corpse. Just the thought of it gave them goosebumps. If they were really to enjoy its company day and night, it was possible they'd puke themselves to death. Guang Yuan still hasn't arrived? Ling Han frowned. The only person by his side that could go against a silver-armored corpse was Guang Yuan, and without that old fellow blocking in front, whoever encountered the silver-armored corpse would only get shredded to pieces. A silver-armored corpse needed a spiritual ocean tier's body to evolve, so they didn't even qualify as food. Senior Guang Yuan was teleported near another ravine,
Lu Yutong said with a bit of regret. The spiritual ocean tier was the strongest force here. With Guang Yuan here, they would be a lot safer. Forget it, let's go. On the way, Yang Ming became livelier after he grasped everyone's situation, calling others brothers. However, he never leaked his identity, and no one was suspicious of him because of Ling Han.
This ravine looked like a stretch of sky from afar, but when actually walking inside, one would definitely be shocked by the ravine's scale. 50 kilometers long and around 1 kilometer in width. Not to mention straight through and through, just as if cut by a sharp weapon. No single place was even a bit wider or a bit narrower.
Several hundred kilometers was naturally no big deal for martial artists in element gathering tier. After a long period of time, they walked past the long ravine, and a majestic hall appeared ahead.
At the first sight of the large hole, everyone revealed a shocked expression, for the edifice was floating in the air, connected to rows of stairs that were floating as well. An impressive spectacle indeed.
So magical. Chapter 224. A Magnificent Turn. Reverie _ What a magical formation. As a former heaven tier cultivator, Ling Han's interest was naturally placed on something else than the others. The others were just shocked by this magical scene, but he found why the palace hall was floating. Right below the hall was an empty public square, but this plain-looking square was not so simple. Vein-like lines formed an intriguing pattern with indistinct flashes of light on it. Another look at the bottom of the palace. There were also corresponding vein-like lines shining faintly there. Ling Han was amazed by it. Though he has seen many formations that were used for either defense or attack, very few were of the anti-gravity type. This certainly looked grand, but for martial artists, this had no practical use. This was the central hall. Behind the large hall was a thick forest. They came just in time to see someone's silhouette disappear into the forest. Let's first go to the central hall to offer blood, Qi Yongyi said.
He counted as half royalty and didn't wish for a calamity to occur in Rain Country in the least. This was the common view of those with a vested interest.
Everyone nodded. If a blood zombie really appeared, it would benefit no one. They walked up the stairs, where there were many people from not only Rain Country, but also Rock Country and Fire Country. The 9 countries had an unwritten rule, which was that fights were prohibited in the central hall. Letting the blood sacrifice go smoothly was of mutual benefit to the 9 large countries. Whoever broke this rule would become the public enemy of the 9 countries. Because the Mystery Realm opened again after more than 300 years, everyone here naturally came for the first time, and while walking on the steps, they cried out in surprise. Many people only moved a step after a long while, shocked by the nature-defying construct. Climbing step by step, their feet were suspended in midair by the steps underneath. As they got higher, they naturally felt unease, but also became excited because who else other than flower blossom tier cultivators could fly amid heaven and earth? Although it didn't count as flying, it was roughly the same feeling. Standing on top of the highest heavens and passing judgment on everything. Ling Han was also a bit overwhelmed by emotions. It was no wonder a formation like this was created through painstaking effort, as it certainly felt more satisfying. To arrange such a large formation, the materials necessary also had to be extremely precious. Small countries like Rain Country and Fire Country couldn't make it even if they used the entire country's power. There was a total of 3,333 steps, yet it took them nearly half an hour to walk to their end. First, they were walking and gazing because it was so shocking, and second, there were too many people on the steps, so squeezing through all the way wasn't easy. The large hall finally appeared in front of them. This was a building without 4 sidewalls and with a total of 12 massive stone columns supporting the ceiling. Each stone column was nearly 333 meters tall, making this large hall appear extremely grand. Young Master! Young Master! A voice filled with surprise was heard. 3 people squeezed out from the crowd, headed by a 60-year-old man with a relatively strong presence. Uncle Fu! Yang Ming's eyes lit up. He instantly revealed a joyful expression and hurriedly greeted them. Young Master, are you all right? The 3 were all nervously looking at Yang Ming. This was AO family's young master. If anything were to happen, they would definitely have to pay with their lives. I'm fine. Yang Ming smiled slightly and turned around. His temperament changed drastically all of a sudden. Although he was hitting it up with the others before, he looked like an underling.
Now he was filled with grace of a person with high status, just like an ugly duckling suddenly turned into a beautiful swan. "Everyone, please allow me to introduce myself again." His eyes swept past everyone. "My family name is Ao, and first name is Yang Ming. I'm a direct disciple of Winter Moon Sect." Winter Moon Sect. In the vast lands, sects and countries could not be randomly established. With only a spiritual ocean tier cultivator to oversee things, an organization could only be called a faction. With a spiritual pedestal tier cultivator overseeing things, a country could be established, and a sect needed an even higher tier. At the very least, a flower blossom tier cultivator had to keep watch over it. Winter Moon Sect was the closest sect near the 9 nations of the desolate north. It was rumored that a formidable spiritual infant tier cultivator watched over Idav, and the 9 nations of the desolate north needed to be respectful of it. For if Winter Moon Sect got displeased, dispatching a random flower blossom tier cultivator could sweep across a single country. And if a spiritual infant tier cultivator personally stepped forth, even the reclusive flower blossom tier cultivators of the 9 nations fighting together would only be put down in the end. The higher the tier, the greater the difference a tier or even half a small tier made, not to mention a large tier's difference. Qi Yongyi and the others were shocked. Being a direct disciple meant that Ao Yang Ming's status in Winter Moon Sect was even nobler than that of the eldest prince and the third prince. It was no wonder he kept his identity secret on the way. He must have been afraid that after it was exposed, people would covet the arts and skills he cultivated. Skills passed by Winter Moon Sect, just how precious was that? Now, Ao Yang Ming had his family's protection, and naturally had no more qualms. Surname Ao? Winter Moon Sect. A coldness flashed by in Ling Han's gaze. Could this guy have any relations with Ao Feng? According to Ling Dongxing, Ao Feng was distinguished and lived an unconventional lifestyle with countless illegitimate children, and because of that, his mother fled the marriage. If one were to say that the person in front of him was Ao Feng's love child, then that was completely possible. He of course wouldn't be impudent and directly ask him. He just showed a faint smile. Qi Yongyi and the others promptly paid obeisance. This was a large sect's direct discipline. Was alright even if they couldn't be friends, but they definitely couldn't have a big argument. Otherwise, it could bring their own families a disaster. Ao Yang Ming was expectedly arrogant, placing his attitude extremely high. Except when he looked at Lu Yutong, his gaze became gentle, and he said, "Lady Yutong, do you have any interest in joining Winter Moon Sect?" Joining Winter Moon Sect. Everyone was shocked, revealing an envious expression. Moon Winter Sect, joining such a sect could give one the chance to step into spiritual pedestal or flower blossom tier, maybe even spiritual infant tier. Of course, just by the looks of Ao Yang Ming inviting only Lu Yutong, one would know what sort of idea this guy had planned. Undoubtedly, Lu Yutong was one of the 2 most beautiful in the imperial city, beautiful like an angel. It was not surprising that Ao Yang Ming fell for her. No! Lu Yutong declined without thinking at all. She knew that Ao Yang Ming fancied her good looks, but even if he really valued her natural aptitude, she wouldn't agree. Firstly, what sort of art was she cultivating? Heaven tier. Would Winter Moon Sect give her heaven tier art to cultivate? Putting aside whether they had it or not, even if they had it, they wouldn't easily pass it on to outsiders. Secondly, following Ling Han, she didn't need to worry about medicinal pills. That guy was not far from becoming an Earth-grade alchemist. Thirdly, and most importantly, she was not willing to leave Ling Han. With the third condition, it was enough to overturn everything. Ao Yang Ming was originally certain that Lu Yutong would agree, but never did he expect her to reject it so straightforwardly. It turned his expression instantly into an awkward one. He looked at Ling Han and revealed a sneering smile from the corner of his lips. On the way, he obviously saw that Lu Yutong had feelings for Ling Han. Then he'd first have to trample on Ling Han to show that the latter was worthless. Chapter 225. Turn Against a Friend. Reverie _ Ao Yang Ming looked at Ling Han with a faint smile at the corner of his lips and said, "Ling Han, shouldn't you return the ancient record I lent you earlier?" Lent. Ling Han smiled as well, and asked somewhat surprised, "Lent? Old brother Yang Ming,
Could it be that you forgot this was the price for saving you? And, weren't you just calling me young Master Han here and there? Now you're directly calling me by name. Aren't you too quick at changing your attitude? Some things were unspoken rules that everyone secretly knew, but it couldn't be laid out on the table, like when Yang Ming pretended to be an underling because he lacked in strength. If he still acted like a great young master, then it was guaranteed he'd be killed in seconds. Oh, you say you're the direct disciple of Winter Moon sect? Show me the proof. Not to mention the ability to produce the proof, even if it was possible, since he offended Moon Winter sect's disciple, why not just kill him instead of inviting trouble? Therefore, Ao Yang Ming naturally acted humbly, and everyone understood why. However, Ling Han laid it bare in public, not giving him any face. Ao Yang Ming's face suddenly had a hint of haze. The old man known as Uncle Fu was burning with murderous spirit, taking a step out to say, "Young man, what nonsense are you saying? Speak carelessly and offend my family's young master again, and I'll definitely spill your blood all over." Hee hee. Ao Yang Ming softly stopped Uncle Fu, and said, "Uncle Fu, Ling Han walked alongside with me. He can talk nonsense, but I can't forget our old friendship. Yes, young master is generous. This old servant admires you greatly," Uncle Fu said with a bow, looking just like a slave. This old man was a spiritual ocean tier cultivator. In this small world, he was one of the top-notch cultivators, and as long as they flaunted their identity as Winter Moon sect, even spiritual pedestal tier cultivators needed to give some face. Qi Yongyi and the others frowned. This old man completely submitted to Ao Yang Ming, and if Ao Yang Ming were determined to oppose Ling Han, then the situation would be far from good. This Ao Yang Ming was truly shameless. Clearly, Ling Han saved him. Forget it if he wasn't grateful, but he went as far as to point the muzzle at Ling Han. Don't burn the bridge after crossing it. He was a typical base person. Ao Yang Ming looked again at Ling Han and said indifferently, "Ling Han, hand over the ancient record and we're still friends, otherwise—" He didn't continue, but Uncle Fu showed a terribly ferocious look, displaying most vividly his dog-slavish appearance. Ling Han laughed loudly and said, "When you've got problems, you call me young Master Han, and when you don't, you call me Ling Han. Could you be a chameleon? Ao Yang Ming. Since when were you my friend? Are you fit to be?" Ao Yang Ming's expression changed abruptly, and Uncle Fu stepped forward again, ready to strike, but Ao Yang Ming reached out and halted him. This young man's expression was cold like water as he looked towards Qi Yongyi and the others, and said, "Everyone, you've all seen Ling Han's arrogance. Do you still want to walk down the shady path? This young master will give you all a chance to sever your connections with Ling Han, and stand behind this young master. Otherwise, you'll be enemies of Winter Moon sect." Those were quite some big words. Winter Moon sect's enemies? Even those who controlled the 8 large families would feel a chill in their hearts, let alone Qi Yongyi and these juniors. That was a superpower with spiritual infant cultivators, and them dispatching a random flower blossom tier could create a massive disturbance for Rain Country. Although Ao Yang Ming couldn't truly represent Winter Moon sect and move flower blossom tier cultivators, Uncle Fu, who stood behind him, alone could suppress all of them. Moreover, Ao Yang Ming could attack absolutely unrestrained, yet would Qi Yongyi and the others dare to harm him? If Ao Yang Ming didn't reveal his identity, then killing him would be no thing no one would know, or have to worry about Winter Moon sect's revenge. But how many people were in the large hall now? Especially with Fire Country's martial artists, they would be extremely happy to see Rain Country's people and Winter Moon sect come into conflict, and better yet, draw out Winter Moon sect's elders, wiping away Rain Country with a single hand. Only able to take a beating and with no way to retaliate, how would one fight a war like that? Ao Yang Ming sneered. He wanted Ling Han to taste betrayal and isolation, then physically attack him, making him break down completely. Qi Yongyi and the others were indecisive, but Jin Wuji was the first to stand by Ling Han's side, his expression resolute. Only with Ling Han's great assistance was he able to get together with Zhang Fei Yan. If he betrayed Ling Han now, would he still be called a man? Kan Yi walked over with an emotionless expression. He honored his words. A promise was like the weight of a mountain. Since he agreed to be Ling Han's sidekick, before he could kill Ling Han with one slash, he'd never betray Ling Han. With the two as an example, Qi Yongyi and the others were naturally affected. Considering that they all had a great social status,
Ao Yongming wouldn't be so rampant as to kill them all, would he? With that thought in mind, they all stood by Ling Han, giving no face to Ao Yongming. Watching one after another walk to Ling Han's side, Ao Yongming's expression fell, and his eyes seemed to be about to spout fire. Were these people blind, rejecting a direct disciple of Winter Moon sect and instead clinging on to Ling Han? Although Ling Han certainly was a bit weird, possessing a strong battle power, he was still an element-gathering tier martial artist when all was said and done. Good. Ao Yongming planned to upset Ling Han by making him feel betrayal, thinking Ling Han would lose himself, and in this way, Lu Yutong's positive feelings about Ling Han would definitely drop. But now, the one who was humiliated was instead him. How could he stand this emotionally? Ling Han, you're not going to hand over what's mine, right? He said threateningly with murderous aura like a saber. Wrong, that was money used to buy your life. Want me to hand it over? Fine, but exchange for it with your life. Ling Han said indifferently. As a former heaven tier cultivator, the pride and unyieldingness in his bones was tougher than anyone else's. Moreover, Ao Yongming was also a Winter Moon sect's disciple that could be Ao Feng's son, so he had even more reason not to be polite. How dare you? Uncle Fu immediately yelled out with fury in his eyes, filled with murderous aura. This time, Ao Yongming did not stop him and instead placed his hands behind his back, appearing extremely pretentious. Uncle Fu understood, and approached Ling Han slowly step by step. His murderous aura was getting fiercer and fiercer. He intentionally tried to give Ling Han enormous pressure, attempting to make this junior collapse under the pressure. Qi Yongyi involuntarily took a few steps back. Though they were on Ling Han's side, their relationship wasn't so good as to fight a spiritual ocean tier cultivator. That was simply suicide. Ling Han didn't have such intentions either. He already prepared a swift cloud talisman, and at the crucial time, he was ready to stick it on and run. Ah! Just when things were about to ignite, a tragic scream came from below. A dark shadow rushed into the crowd. Pang, pang, pang. The nearby people were shaken like rice straws, limbs and blood splattering everywhere. Rong Huanxian's figure appeared. He was still dragging 3 bronze caskets, but all 3 corpse soldiers were already out and on a killing spree. Chapter 226. Power of the Bronze Casket. Reverie _ Other than Ling Han and Ao Yongming, the other people didn't know about Rong Huanxian's background. Seeing that Rong Huanxian was actually slaughtering people in the central hall, the people there were shocked and infuriated. This kid dared disobey the common law of the 9 nations, and kill people here publicly. Moreover, he was obviously not seeking revenge on anyone, because the 3 corpse soldiers were basically on an indiscriminate killing spree. They killed whoever they saw and ate whoever they killed, filling people with fear and disgust. What the hell are these things? Not everyone had such rich experience like Ling Han. Seeing 3 things that were supposed to be dead full of life and appetite, they couldn't help but stare blankly and feel their worldview break down. Could it be the blood zombies? Someone said with a trembling voice. The blood zombie was originally a myth, but if it really did appear, then it'd be completely within reason. As those words came out, quite a few people were frightened out of their wits. Back then, when the blood zombie came into being years ago, it almost annihilated the 9 nations of the desolate north, forcing the 9 recluse flower blossom tier cultivators to cooperate and sacrifice their lives to kill the blood zombie. To kill it, flower blossom tier cultivators had to die with it. What abilities and status did they have to fight against such an existence? No. Someone immediately saw the discrepancy. This strongest monster is only in the spiritual ocean tier. It isn't a blood zombie. You're right, it's just in the spiritual ocean tier. Many more people saw through the 3 corpse soldiers' strengths. 1 in the spiritual ocean tier, 1 in the gushing spring tier, 1 in the element gathering tier. Nothing to be afraid of. The masses gradually calmed their minds. Though there were people coming and going, and 10 people with the cultivation of the spiritual ocean tier were present, could they not take care of it 10-on-1? Discovering that the corpse soldiers were nothing to be afraid of, Uncle Fu also calmed down, and swiveled his gaze back on Ling Han. A chill seeped from the corner of his lips as he said, "Junior, come kneel and beg for forgiveness before my young master. I can still plead on your behalf to spare your worthless life."
Oh, if you like being someone else's lapdog, then that's that, yet you still act all high and mighty. I honestly don't know from where you get that sense of superiority. Ling Han shook his head. I'll just take that I saved an ingrate. Impudence. Uncle Fu was enraged, finally deciding not to toy with Ling Han anymore and just kill him mercilessly. Pang, 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 pang. The three corpse soldiers attacked in their direction. Under the guidance of the silver-armored corpse, they completely swept everything before them. Rong Xianhuan carried the bronze casket, following behind. It was not known why he kept carrying such a heavy thing.
Ha ha ha, let's see where you'll run off to now.
Rong Huanxian stared at Ling Han, full of murderous aura. What the? Qi Yongyi and the others were in cold sweat. They felt that Ling Han was too good at finding trouble. Just look, a spiritual ocean tear had yet to be taken care of, and here came another one. Rong Huanxian swept a glance at Uncle Fu and said coldly, "Get out of my way." Uncle Fu was trembling in anger. A mere 5th level gushing spring tear dared tell him to get out the way? Where did he get such confidence? He sneered and said, "Junior, you're dead for sure." Shua, the silver-armored corpse's figure flashed, and it struck at Uncle Fu with a claw, radiating an indistinct stench. Corpse poison. Uncle Fu called out in surprise. As a Winter Moon sect disciple, his knowledge and experience was naturally above that of normal people. That's right. My silver-armored corpse has 4th level corpse poison. If you get tainted by it, then I promise you'll die through and through. Rong Huanxian laughed out loud. Junior, there's no hatred between us. Why must we fight to the death? Uncle Fu attacked consecutively, yet he found no way past the silver-armored corpse defense. He attacked continuously, yet it didn't dodge or evade. Its body was stable like Mount Tai, and he couldn't even disrupt its pace. Chapter 227. Lu Yu Tong's Choice. Reverie _ You guys go first. Ling Han said to Qi Yongyi and the others. And you? Lu Yu Tong asked hurriedly. Ling Han smiled. I won't go for now, but I'll quickly catch up to you guys. Ha ha ha, you won't be able to leave. Rong Huanxian's droning voice came from inside the bronze casket. You all must die and become my corpse soldiers' food. Ling Han ignored him and said, You guys go, that way I won't have to worry. Qi Yongyi and the rest nodded and left. They didn't know why they believed Ling Han firmly. It was as if this boy had an ineffable charisma that made them involuntarily follow what he said. When they backed Ling Han, part of it was due to his charismatic personality. Kill, don't let a single one go. Rong Huanxian yelled from inside the bronze casket. The silver-armored corpse immediately cast aside Uncle Fu and stood guard at the exit, killing whoever thought to escape. It had battle power of the spiritual ocean tier, even exceeding 9 stars in battle prowess. While it couldn't use any techniques, it had lethal corpse poison instead, which was even better than techniques against people who were at lower tiers. One sweep killed an entire crowd. Stop it! Several spiritual ocean tier cultivators yelled out. The juniors here were from their country. Moreover, it involved the blood sacrifice problem. If it prompted the blood zombie to appear, then it truly would be a big incident. Thus, 8 spiritual ocean tier cultivators fought the silver-armored corpse together. Everyone, leave the large hall immediately, and if you see other people on the way, tell them to change paths and head to other central halls. With the 8 people blocking the silver-armored corpse, the other people finally got the chance and fled continuously out the hall. Go! Ling Han said to Lu Yu Tong. If you don't go, then I won't go. Lu Yu Tong clenched her teeth as she said. Humph, quite affectionate. Ao Yang Ming sneered. Uncle Fu, take them down. Yes, young master. Uncle Fu quickly nodded and stared coldly at Ling Han, approaching step by step. Time to go. Hold on to me. Ling Han carried Hu Niu in one hand while yelling out to Lu Yu Tong. Lu Yu Tong's face reddened, but she clung onto Ling Han without hesitation. Smelling his strong and manly smell, she felt her heart thump fiercely, almost jumping out from her throat. Go. Where do you think you're going? Uncle Fu sneered. He was already blocking their way to the hall's exit. Was Ling Han still going to force his way through?
Ling Han dashed swiftly. With only a few steps, he was already at the edge of the hall.
This hall had no surrounding sidewalls, and he could jump out whichever way.
Only the direction of the entrance had flights of steps. As for the other 3 directions, well, sorry, that's several thousand meters height. Below was the concrete plaza, and jumping down from this height led only to death.
Uncle Fu, bring them back! Ao Yongming yelled out at once.
Ling Han's death didn't matter, but if a beautiful woman like Lu Yutong were to fall and turn into a bloody mess, how unfortunate would that be?
This old servant understands. Uncle Fu scuttled to the edge of the hall.
He reached out with his hand, forming a massive hand made of origin power, grabbing at Ling Han at an incredible speed. Spiritual Ocean Tier was Spiritual Ocean Tier after all. As his hands opened up, he already reached Ling Han's back.
Seeing this, Lu Yutong grit her teeth and revealed a determined expression.
Ling Han noticed it and said at once, "Don't be reckless." However, Lu Yutong ignored him and pushed Ling Han with both hands. Ling Han fell faster, and she rammed into the large hand. Ding! She unleashed her sword and sliced at the massive hand made of origin power.
The difference in strength was just too great.
That massive hand clenched and Lu Yutong was easily captured. However, due to her action, Ling Han was already out of the massive hand's furthest reach, so it could only roll back with Li Yutong in hold. Uncle Fu threw Lu Yutong off-handedly to the ground and said to Ao Yongming, "This old servant has failed you, please punish me, young master."
"No matter, that guy will face certain death anyways." Ao Yongming scowled.
He only cared for Lu Yutong. So what if Ling Han fell into bits? The ancient record wouldn't break from the fall, so he could just pick it up from the corpse later. However, his face instantly revealed an astounded expression, because Ling Han opened up a large umbrella as he fell and the speed of his descent slowed immediately. It was as if a cotton wad was floating in the air and into the distant forest. Now, with this detour, even if Uncle Fu immediately chased out the hole, Ling Han would have already fallen into the forest. That was a natural barrier, and how would he find Ling Han after that? "Damn it!" he immediately hollered, but when his gaze swept past Lu Yutong, a smirk appeared at the corner of his lips. With this hostage in hand, he wouldn't have to worry about Ling Han hiding forever and not coming out. In the distance, Ling Han's gaze was as if it could penetrate space, falling on Ao Yongming's face. At this moment, a fierce killing intent was born in his heart. Ao Yongming automatically felt a chill within, but he immediately thought that with his identity, he had no need to fear this boy. Thus, he straightened his back at once. Ling Han mouthed a few words, and didn't look again, falling into the forest. "Look, you risked your life for him, yet he didn't even look back once more," Ao Yongming said to Lu Yutong. This was naturally the time to drive a wedge between them. Lu Yutong was unmoved and looked deridingly at Ao Yongming and said, "He'll come save me." "Oh, save you on what basis?" Ao Yongming sneered, "A mere trash with cultivation in the element gathering tier." Lu Yutong said no more, as if holding Ao Yongming in contempt. Ao Yongming was furious and about to flip out, but heard Uncle Fu say, "Young master, it's dangerous here. Let's talk after we leave." Ao Yongming could only nod and say, "Go." The party left the large hall. They heard from afar the fierce sounds of the battle between the 8 spiritual ocean tier cultivators and the silver-armored corpse, and a worried expression surfaced on their faces. Ling Han put away the blood-sucking origin gold, his expression gloomy as he walked along. Hunyo sensed the rage hidden underneath Ling Han's calm expression, and bared her teeth as if about to bite someone. "I can't not save my attendant. However, if I go as I am now, it's equivalent to suicide." Ling Han thought as he walked. "The only way is for me to break through to Gushing Spring Tier and obtain the Black Tower's one-time power-up blessing. With the power of the first layer of the Spiritual Ocean Tier, I'll find a chance to activate 10,000 techniques return to 1, killing that old dog with a strike." 10,000 techniques return to 1 cultivated to an extreme was essentially forging 1,000 sword strikes into 1, which allowed Ling Han to kill someone above his tier. However, this move required a terrifying amount of origin power. It was impossible for Ling Han to perform now, but with Spiritual Ocean Tier's power, it was definitely possible. "No matter what, I must break through to Gushing Spring." Ling Han set his resolution, found a covert place in the thick forest,
and began the last power accumulation. Within his dantian, the origin nucleus hadn't reached the extreme, but he needed at most only 3 days. He now was charging through with full force, and it was very possible that within 2 days he would reach element gathering tier's true extreme. 2 days. He only needed 2 days' time. Chapter 228. Forming a Spring. Reverie _ Ling Han charged toward the bottleneck with full force. Hu Niu also seemed to have received a shock. Surprisingly, she wasn't raucous and started cultivating too. The two were both on the freakish level. Ling Han spent 2 days to reach the peak of the element gathering tier, whereas Hu Niu reached the peak of the 7th layer of the element gathering tier, not far from where Ling Han was. Break! Ling Han took out a few medicinal pills and threw them into his mouth all at once. He didn't need to comprehend the next tier. As long as he had enough energy to support him, the door to gushing spring tier would open. Break! Hu Niu's tender and sweet voice followed, and she began to charge toward the 8th layer of the element gathering tier in a similar manner. Within Ling Han's body, an earth-shaking change was happening. A small tier's increase was only the difference of one more origin nucleus. Even if he reached the 10th layer of the element gathering tier, fusing 9 large origin nuclei into one super large origin nucleus, that was still a change in origin nuclei. However, from element gathering tier to gushing spring tier, it was a qualitative Chanhei, a completely new change. Transforming origin nucleus into a spring of origin power, a gushing origin power. Crossing this step, a martial artist's power would increase 10 times. Power didn't equal battle prowess, but it made up the core of the battle prowess. Without strong power support, how could one form battle prowess that overwhelmed all others? Ling Han had enough knowledge of the next tier, so breaking through to gushing spring tier was supposed to be easy, but the truth was not so. That was because he had only one origin nucleus. His experience was based on the breakthrough with 9 origin nuclei in his previous life, but now it turned into 1. That changed it completely, and all his experience became useless. However, knowledge of the next tier was still useful. It was just the method that needed adjustment. The method was essentially the same, turning the origin nucleus into a spring. But, what was different was that while breaking through with 9 origin nuclei, one could use the other 8 nuclei as supportive power. Now, he could only use 1, and his power source became a problem. His personal strength couldn't be used, so he could only shove medicinal pills down his throat. Ling Han waved his hands continuously while ingesting medicinal pills, and the medicinal power came into effect within his body, forming a massive power like a tsunami that could crush mountains. Waves of abstruse power rushed into Ling Han's body. This was because his tier was sufficient, and so was his comprehension of the next tier. Heaven and earth resonated, continually softening his origin nucleus like the ripples of water. The power of heaven and earth already came into effect. Next, it was all up to him. Turn into a spring. Ling Han initiated the 5 elements mix chaos lotus to absorb the surrounding spiritual qi, and on top of the medicinal pills power, he continued to attack the origin nucleus, attempting to liquidize it into the spring's eye, the source of power. This step was very hard, unlike in case of the normal element gathering tier with 8 other nuclei as supportive power, which made it much easier. Now, he could only rely on medicinal pills and spirit base to absorb power. It was truly too little. It was his own decision to break through to the 10th nucleus that gave him immense strength, so he naturally had to pay a corresponding price. Shwa, 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 Ling Han kept shoving down pills, even taking in the 4 transformations pill that could only be used at gushing spring tier in order to provide the terrifying amount of energy needed to transform the superorigin nucleus into a spring. Normal people's origin nuclei turned into a spring one by one, and the last nucleus transformed at 9th layer of the gushing spring tier. At that time there would be 8 springs of origin power to provide power, and one truly only needed tier comprehension power needs when nothing important. How was that possible? Ling Hang was somewhat muddled. Could he have instantly been teleported here by the Black Tower? The Black Tower had a teleportation function. Chapter 229. The Black Tower opens. Reverie _ Wang, the Black Tower appeared, floating up and down in front of Ling Han. The Black Tower. Ling Han was deeply moved. Since seeing the Black Tower 10 millennia ago, this was his second time using his physical body to view the Black Tower, realizing thoroughly that he lived twice as human. Wrong, I am not the Black Tower you saw 10 millennia ago, but the Black Tower's spirit. Small Tower 1 seemed to hear Ling Han's thoughts and unexpectedly, it gently swayed, telepathically sending a thought right into Ling Han's consciousness. What? Ling Han was shocked as he asked, "You're a spirit? Then where am I?" "Of course within the Black Tower," Small Tower said. Ling Han was somewhat confused as he said, "The Black Tower is within my Dantian, yet I'm within the Black Tower, how is that possible?" "Take a look at your Dantian," Small Tower said. Ling Han looked within his Dantian, yet found that the Dantian was already empty and devoid of the existence of the Black Tower. "You've entered inside the Black Tower, and the Black Tower naturally resides in the world you're in," Small Tower said indifferently. In actuality, its intonation had always been dull, without a trace of emotion. "Who knew?" Ling Han was startled. The massiveness of the Black Tower was something he had seen, and it also had mighty abilities. A ray of light it sent shattered him, who was a heaven tier in his former life, to death. Hu Niu, who was meditating by his side, couldn't possibly have been crushed to death, right? Even if she wasn't crushed to death, with the little girl's savageness, she'd definitely pounce and bite back fiercely. The result of that would be inconceivable, too. "Don't worry, after you enter the Black Tower itself turned into a speck no different from dust, and no one shall realize the difference," Small Tower still spoke in a dead man's tone. Ling Han let out a sigh of relief, then patted his own head and said mockingly, "Why didn't I feel it odd that a spirit suddenly came out to talk to me?" "Wait, are you saying that I'm inside the Black Tower?" Ling Han suddenly came to a realization. "Yes," Small Tower said calmly. Ling Han's jaw instantly dropped and he said, "How's it possible? The Black Tower can turn into a speck of dust and has a spirit, which means it is a spirit tool. Then, the space it forms should be the same as that of the spatial ring, so how can it contain living beings? The space here is a separate world created by it naturally. It can contain living beings. What's so strange about it?" Small Tower said indifferently. Ling Han was shocked, and then revealed an expression of wild excitement. The Black Tower could contain living beings and turn into the size of a speck of dust. What did this mean? When he faced danger, he could enter the Black Tower, similar to how Rong Huanxian could hide in the bronze casket. The difference was that the internal space of the Black Tower was who knows how much larger, and it could become infinitely small. Enemies wouldn't know what happened, and might assume that he knew how to teleport. A godly item. This definitely was a godly item. He had never heard of a spatial vessel that could contain living beings and change its size. Moreover, he was already wearing a spatial ring on his hand. One had to know that spatial vessels couldn't be stacked, meaning that a spatial vessel couldn't be put into another spatial vessel. He was now inside the Black Tower, yet the spatial ring was still on his hand. This meant that the two things could be stacked. "Can I bring others inside?" Ling Han asked. "Yes." "How?" Small Tower used its will to teach Ling Han how to bring in other things, which included living humans and other living beings. The key was that living beings couldn't have any thought of resistance, or else he had to first knock the being out. Xiao, Ling Han's body flashed and reappeared in the forest in the outside world. Hu Niu was at a loss, looking around, and when she saw Ling Han appear, she pounced at him and said, "How come Niu couldn't find you earlier?" Ling Han laughed mischievously and said, "I'll take you somewhere, don't resist." "Oh." Hu Niu nodded, not really understanding. Ling Han grabbed onto Hu Niu and followed the method Small Tower transferred with its will earlier with a thought, Xiao. He and Hu Niu already appeared inside the Black Tower. "Wow!" Hu Niu revealed an astounded expression and couldn't help but open up both arms and run in this vast space. She giggled as she ran, seeming to be extremely lively. "Can you see what's weird with this little girl?" Ling Han asked Small Tower. Small Tower trembled lightly as if nodding and said, "I received a heavy injury, and do not possess any of my past memories." "What?" Ling Han cried out. The Black Tower lightly trembled and annihilated him when he was once a heaven-tier cultivator, but a godly tool such as this received a heavy injury, even losing all its past memories. Then who exactly attacked it?
I have an indistinct feeling that my existence will attract the covetous eyes of many, so before you possess peerless strength, you mustn't reveal my secret, Small Tower said coldly.
Ling Han nodded.
Not to mention the Black Tower, the indestructible heaven scroll alone weighed heavily. He wouldn't reveal a shred of that secret even if beaten to death.
But, are you really called the Black Tower? He asked.
Small Tower trembled lightly and said, I already lost all my memories, even of my name.
Ling Han couldn't help but be depressed. He thought that after he broke through to Gushing Spring Tear, he could understand the Black Tower secrets. He would have never thought that other than getting a castle that he could carry around, there didn't seem to be any other changes. Of course, this castle was enough to even make Shattering Void Tier cultivators envious and risk everything to get it. The Black Tower totals 9 layers, and when you reach certain strength, you'll be able to open the corresponding layer, with each layer having different functions, Small Tower said.
Ling Han immediately revealed a joyful look and said, What sort of functions? My memory is already lost, so only after you've opened a new layer of the tower will I receive the corresponding information, Small Tower said unhurriedly. Thus, I can only tell you now the first layer's function. It paused for a bit then said, The first layer is a medicinal garden. The spirit grass planted here will grow as if 1 year is equivalent to that of 1,000 years.
Pooh! Ling Han suddenly choked. 1 year equaled 1,000 years?
If I wanted 1,000-year-old ginseng, then wouldn't I only have to wait a year? I have blurry memories, but after opening a certain unknown layer, I can further accelerate it, Small Tower supplemented.
Ling Han almost jumped in joy.
There were 2 problems that troubled alchemists. First, the standard of pill refinement. You couldn't let a earth-grade alchemist refine a heaven-grade medicinal pill. Second, the ingredients. Even a skillful housewife couldn't cook a meal without rice, and so even a heaven-grade alchemist couldn't refine yellow-grade medicinal pills out of thin air. And the higher the medicinal pills grade, the higher the requirements for spirit grass were too, frequently requiring 100-year or 1,000-year-old ingredients. Some highest-grade spiritual plants even needed to be 10 millennia old. There were only so many spirit grasses in the world. Harvesting from generation to generation, were there still so many 1,000-year-old and 10 millennia old plants left? 100-year-old plants were already rare. However, the Black Tower could easily solve this problem. Spirit grasses raised here for a year were equivalent to 1,000-year-old spirit grasses in the outside world. It was even possible to accelerate it further after opening a certain layer.
Nature-defying.
It definitely was a godly item.
Chapter 230. Finding People. Reverie _ This was only the first level of the Black Tower's abilities.
Ling Han was utterly shocked. It was no wonder Small Tower said to strictly keep the Black Tower secret, because once leaked, the entire world's strongest cultivators would chase his but to fight for the Black Tower. Say, we're already so familiar. Could you give me more one-use power-up chances?
Ling Han catoned up to Small Tower.
No. Small Tower trembled lightly, as if to shake its head. Why, we're all on the same side. You don't think it'd be taken by someone else?
Ling Han patiently continued with his persuasion.
Small Tower shook again and said, That's not so. The power-up process is actually remolding your body once. You can only endure it once per tier.
1 more will hurt your foundation. The 3rd time is certain death.
I cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll. It shouldn't be a problem, Ling Han said. The indestructible heaven scroll is imparted by the Black Tower. So how can you rely on what the Black Tower imparted to resolve the pressures the Black Tower adds onto you?
Small Tower said.
That made sense.
Every tier, he could only get 1 power-up.
The later it is, the better for a power-up, as it increases your physical qualities more, Small Tower said.
Ling Han nodded.
With regards to this, Small Tower was the expert, and he could only comply. He couldn't help but be depressed, since he originally thought that after he struck up a relationship with the spirit, he'd have full control of the Black Tower. He never thought that he'd only be able to enter the first level. Fortunately, the first level's functions already made him overjoyed, and he looked forward to finding out just how surprising the abilities of the 2nd and 3rd level would be even more. Only after Hu Niu ran a circle did she stop by Ling Han's side, and looked at Small Tower whilst tiling her head, appearing extremely curious.
Niu wants to play, She pounced toward Small Tower. Xiao, her figure went right through Small Tower's figure, as if Small Tower didn't exist. Duh! A spirit was originally in existence like a soul spirit, so how could it be touched? Time to find Ao Yongming for some revenge. Ling Han flashed out of the Black Tower. Although he didn't fully control this treasure that was far beyond a spiritual weapon, it didn't matter. His thoughts and the Black Tower were connected, and Small Tower could contact him at any time. He first returned to the central hall to see if he could find the whereabouts of Ao Yongming's party. On the way, Ling Han listened to Small Tower describe some details regarding the Black Tower. For example, if he entered the Black Tower, then it was equivalent to perfect protection. No amount of power could hurt him, and no perilous environment could hurt him either. Of course, this was only limited to this world. Ling Han was certain that above this world was a greater world, which was the world that Shattering Void tier cultivators entered after reaching the extreme. However, the two worlds obviously had an obstruction that was extremely hard to cross, separating them. At least, in Ling Han's previous life, he never saw a god spirit, and never even saw a living Shattering Void tier. Anyways, it was impossible to encounter such a strong being right now. There was no need to worry. Besides, inside the Black Tower, he had absolute power because he was the master of the god tool. He could fly, he could teleport, he could change the rules within the Black Tower at will, as if he were the Heaven tier cultivator in former days. No, even more badass than a Heaven tier, because Heaven tiers wouldn't have the ability to teleport and couldn't change rules. It could be said that even Sword Emperor's life would be at Ling Han's mercy, unless Sword Emperor's strength already transcended that of the Black Tower. Ling Han soon arrived at the central hall. Looking from afar, the crowded tide of people was already no longer present. Presumably, Rong Huanxian hadn't left, and was currently waiting for opportunities. Ling Han wouldn't want to use his one chance of power-up on a corpse soldier, and the pressing matter was to save Lu Yutong. He circled in the vicinity, but couldn't find Ao Yongming's whereabouts. The mystery realm was similar to the size of a country. Just how difficult was it to find someone in here? With Ling Han's thought, Hunyo already appeared by his side. After the little girl slept enough, she was bored and alone inside the Black Tower, making a hue and cry to be let out. He held on to Hunyo's hand, and planned to find others to question. After a while's walk, there was nobody in the surrounding. Ling Han couldn't help but be disappointed and muttered, "Where did those guys go?" "Ling Han, who are you looking for?" Hunyo asked. "Yutong and that brat Ao Yongming," Ling Han said thoughtlessly. Hunyo raised her hand and said, "Nyo knows." Nyo knows. Ling Han somewhat doubted. Hunyo made a sniffing motion and said, "Nyo can smell it out." Ling Han was astonished. Although he knew that beasts had a keen sense of smell, this little girl only grew up with a fierce tiger. Could that really have raised her sense of smell? Anyways, he had no idea which was the correct direction, so it couldn't hurt to listen to the little girl. "All right, you lead the way," he said. Hunyo was happy all of a sudden, immediately walking towards a direction. Ling Han followed, and the two traveled stop and go. When they stopped, it was either because Hunyo was hungry or because she was sniffing out the smell. After 2 days like this, Hunyo's movements slowed and sharpened. "Almost found her," so she said. Ling Han nodded. Hunyo maintained the preying habit of beasts, and the closer she got to the prey, the more cautious she was. He said, Nyo, go play in the tower first, I'll play with you after I save Yutong." "Yes. Hunyo nodded repeatedly, and let Ling Han put her into the Black Tower. Ling Han carried onward, and in less than a moment, he saw 5 tents up ahead. He jumped onto a large tree, carefully observing. After a long time, he saw Ao Yongming, Uncle Fu, and the other 2 attendants come out of the tents separately to start a campfire to cook rations and dried meat. When the savory smell was emitted, Ao Yongming walked in front of a tent, and opened it to say something that couldn't be heard. After a while, Ling Han saw a girl come out. It was Lu Yutong. Uncle Fu frowned slightly, jumping out fiercely like a large bird and landing under the tree where Ling Han hid. "Uncle Fu, is something wrong?" Ao Yongming asked. Uncle Fu looked up, but there were just pieces of green leaves, and no shred of peculiarity. He turned his head and said,
This old servant was overly sensitive.
He felt a presence surge that caused him to leap out, yet found no one. He was confident that within such a short distance, no one in the same tier could escape from his eyes. Spiritual pedestal tier cultivators couldn't enter, so he judged he must have been overly sensitive. The old man walked back, slumped down, and looked at Lu Yutong. He said in a displeased manner, "Lady Lu, my young master has treated you sincerely, why don't you know what's good for you?" "Uncle Fu." Ao Yongming waved his hands hurriedly to stop Uncle Fu from continuing. He then looked at Lu Yutong and smiled as he said, "Uncle Fu's just worried for me, don't blame him, Yutong." Chapter 231. Blurred Vision. Reverie _ Lu Yutong just laughed coldly. She complied perfectly with eating and sleeping, and hastening on with travel. She didn't go on a hunger strike or refuse to move faster, but when she didn't need to speak, she definitely wouldn't speak. This made Ao Yongming feel like a tiger biting on a turtle, depressed from not knowing how to approach. He was into Lu Yutong, and wanted to use his identity, status and strength to move Lu Yutong. However, in Lu Yutong's eyes, he didn't even exist, driving him crazy. This time, it naturally ended with Ao Yongming feeling depressed. Lu Yutong returned to her tent after she finished eating, acting like a guest. Humph! The smile on Ao Yongming's face immediately disappeared, and he turned ashen. He spent such a long time yet couldn't even subdue a woman, almost losing his patience. Before this, as long as he flaunted his status as Winter Moon Sect's direct disciple, what woman would not immediately dive into his arms? Even if some woman pretended to be aloof, he only had to act a bit cold for the other person to immediately dive into his arms out of panic. This was his time-tested experience with picking up girls. However, Lu Yutong completely ignored him after he exhausted all his methods.
Uncle Fu moved closer as he said, "Young master, the key still lies in that youngster."
Ao Yongming nodded. If Ling Han didn't die, then Lu Yutong would think of Ling Han, not letting him into her heart. However, Ling Han definitely ran as far as possible, so how was he going to find and kill Ling Han? More importantly, the ancient record was still with Ling Han. His memory wasn't bad, but it didn't reach the level where he could memorize an entire ancient record just from reading it once, not to mention the numerous pictures, which naturally made memorizing it even harder. Winter Moon Sect was very interested in Devil Sky Mystery Realm too, but the time interval between each time the Mystery Realm opened was too long and not fixed, so it was very hard to occupy. He just happened to come to Rain Country and coincidentally encountered the Mystery Realm's opening, so he set aside the proper business and entered the realm. He couldn't care less about blood zombies. No matter how chaotic it became, it was a matter of the 9 nations of the desolate north. Besides, Winter Moon Sect had spiritual infant tier ancestors that oversaw it, so even if a blood zombie came to their doors, they would easily kill it. Thus, he really wanted to explore the depths of the mystery realm. Maybe there would be an enormous opportunity that awaited him. He originally had great luck and obtained a local's logbook, but he was hunted down after only flipping through a few pages. He could only hide it whilst he ran, and didn't expect he'd have to offer it in return for being saved by Ling Han. He was humiliated and lost the ancient record. Those 2 reasons alone made him want to kill Ling Han. "That brat probably won't appear again," Ao Yongming said fiercely. Without the ancient record's map as guidance, this mystery realm was filled with crises at each step. Even with Uncle Fu's protection, he still didn't dare venture deeper. The 4 talked for a while, then returned to their own tents. Ling Han watched it all unfold inside the Black Tower.
With Small Tower's guidance, he could basically control the Black Tower, like how he could watch and hear the surrounding environment even though he was in the tower.
Of course, this had a distance limitation.
He was almost discovered by Uncle Fu earlier, and when he entered the Black Tower, Small Tower told him that he could monitor the situation outside while within the Black Tower, undoubtedly saving him a lot of trouble. From a certain perspective, the Black Tower could be considered his clone, except he didn't have full control of the latter, because there were 8 levels that weren't open to him yet. Xiao, he appeared from within the Black Tower and walked softly towards Lu Yutong's tent. However, he only walked 2 steps, soon entering the Black Tower. A figure flashed by. Uncle Fu dashed out from within a tent, and wore a strange expression. Just now, he heard a faint movement,
but saw nothing when he ran out. Where was the culprit? He absolutely wouldn't believe there was anyone who could escape from his area of perception in such a short amount of time. So naturally, he felt it extremely odd. 2 times he misjudged, which made him undoubtedly question himself if he'd gotten blurred vision. The old man stood idly for a while, and then shook his head, walking back into the tent. However, only a few breaths later, he dashed out in a flash again, looking around to confirm that there was nobody, and then walked back into the tent again. The old man was extremely suspicious. Although Ling Han thought that, if it were he who felt the restriction was touched in his garden, then he definitely wouldn't doubt himself. Someone definitely must have entered, and if he didn't realize, then the other person's concealing methods were superior. He appeared again, and without walking 2 steps, he flashed back into the Black Tower, disappearing once again. Uncle Fu appeared, and the expression on his face was even stranger. He subconsciously patted his head once, feeling like he was driven mad. This time, he stood outside for a longer period of time, at least 5 minutes before he turned to enter the tent. Ling Han appeared, and jumped into Lu Yutong's tent in 1 step. Ah! Lu Yutong immediately yelled out in surprise. This instantly caught the attention of Ao Yongming and the others. They jumped out of their tents one after another, and Ao Yongming could be heard saying, "Lady Yutong, what's the matter?" "It's nothing, I just had a nightmare." Lu Yutong looked at Ling Han with a gaze of disbelief while suppressing the shock in her heart and doing her best to speak calmly. The 4 others outside had no suspicions. Who could have thought someone actually snuck in? They returned to their own tents one after another. "It's too dangerous here, just leave," Lu Yutong said in an extremely quiet voice. "Don't worry, since I have the ability to come in, I have the ability to leave too," Ling Han said with a smile. "Call Ao Yongming over." Lu Yutong's eyes instantly lit up and she said, "We're using him as hostage." Ling Han didn't actually plan on that. After acquiring the ability to hide within the Black Tower, he never even thought of using his only chance for a power-up on an old dog like Uncle Fu. Based on his current abilities, it was enough for him to get away. He didn't explain and said, "First call him." Lu Yutong nodded and settled down, raising her voice. "Young Master Ao, could you come over for a chat? Yutong has something to ask." Right after her words were spoken, Ao Yongming immediately scuttled out wearing a proud smile. As it turned out, Lu Yutong's resistance was merely so. She still ended up compromising, didn't she? He was actually used to seeing beautiful women. Though Lu Yutong was remarkably beautiful even amongst the beautiful, it was rather that he couldn't put down his pride. He was successful in all his endeavors with women but bumped into a wall with Lu Yutong, which made him persistent and determined to conquer her. However, once Lu Yutong revealed her intention to compromise, his interest decreased by a lot. It was just like the people say, what we can't have is what we want the most. However, he didn't truly obtain her yet, thus he was still quite excited, immediately tidying up his appearance and walking over to Lu Yutong's tent. Uncle Fu did not move, since Lu Yutong's cultivation had already been sealed, so she couldn't pull any tricks. Chapter 232. Take Down. Reverie _ Yutong. Ao Yongming just opened up the tent, and soon saw a youngster smiling at him, giving him a shock. "Ling Han," he cried out. "Xiao." Uncle Fu instantly rushed out. His mission was to protect Ao Yongming. Too late. He saw Ao Yongming had already fallen into the youngster's hands, and a sword laid on Ao Yongming's neck as a few drops of blood trickled down Ao Yongming's skin. He could only stop in place. Ling Han was now a genuine gushing spring tear with 9 large origin nuclei fused into 1 super origin nuclei that formed into a spring's eye. Just how many times stronger was he than a normal first-level gushing spring tear? He had 5 elements origin nucleus to begin with, and his power was 4 to 5 times higher than people the same tier. On top of this, his power was at least 10 times higher. Even if the difference between stages in element gathering tier was greater, he could at least rival 5th level element gathering tier solely in terms of power. This was also because he just broke through, and didn't reach the peak period of the first layer of the element gathering tier. Moreover, it was without counting various arts and techniques that could bring his battle prowess up. Concerning true battle prowess, he definitely surpassed 9 stars. A 9-star gushing spring tear against an element-gathering tear. Would that not be as easy as the swipe of a hand?
Ling Han.
Ao Yongming gnashed his teeth, a fierce and irritated expression on his face. He had thought Lu Yutong finally submitted, but to think she'd set him up instead. In other words, Lu Yutong still chose Ling Han. This realization was simply a violent slap to the face.
Let go of young master,
Uncle Fu said coldly, his eyes full of killing intent.
He finally knew that the suspicious movements he felt earlier were not him seeing wrong because of blurred vision, but it was this guy's superior methods deceiving his eyes.
Ling Han smiled slightly and said, "Old man, don't you scare me. I'm timid, so once you scare me and my hand slips, don't blame me if your young master's neck gets slit open."
He intentionally wobbled his hand, and a drop of blood immediately oozed out from Ao Yongming's neck, turning into a pearl dripping down.
Uncle Fu's face was full of fright as he said, "Stop!
You're scaring me again,"
Ling Han said, pretending to complain, and shaking his hand even harder. Uncle Fu was at wit's end. Taking a step back, he said, "Youngster, we can talk this out." Ao Yongming, however, appeared very arrogant, and said, "Ling Han, I am Wintermoon Sect's direct disciple. If you dare touch a single hair on me, then Wintermoon Sect's power will crush you and everyone around you into pieces."
"Pah!"
Ling Han slapped Ao Yongming heavily on the head and said, "Stray dog, from where do you get this feeling of superiority? I'll slap you till you're awake."
Ling Han.
Ao Yongming squawked.
Growing up till now, he had never been slapped on the head, making his eyes redden, wishing deeply to tear Ling Han to shreds.
"What are you screaming for?" Ling Han snorted, and knocked Ao Yongming out with a karate chop.
"Young master!"
Uncle Fu cried out, but realizing that Ao Yongming was only unconscious, he calmed down a little. Looking back at Ling Han, he said, "Let go of young master, this old one will let you leave safely."
"Old dog. You think everyone else an idiot?"
Ling Han sneered.
"Once I free him, I'll immediately suffer from your treacherous assault. This old one honors with my reputation."
"Shoo, shoo, shoo. What sort of crappy reputation would an old flunky like you have? Stop embarrassing yourself," Ling Han said in disdain. Uncle Fu shivered with anger. While he was considered an old servant ordered to protect Ao Yongming, he was still a spiritual ocean tier cultivator. Even at Wintermoon Sect, spiritual ocean tier cultivators were a force not to be neglected. "Get out. I want some sleep. When I sleep enough and regain some spirit, I'll discuss with you, old dog, how to redeem your young master." Ling Han flicked his fingers and said, "You can say goodbye on your knees." Uncle Fu naturally wouldn't kneel down, but seeing Ling Han's sword swaying near Ao Yongming's neck, he could only sigh and close the tent, sitting cross-legged on the ground. He was waiting for a chance. If Ling Han wanted to run and stuck out his head out of the tent, then he would smash Ling Han's head with thunderous force, not giving Ling Han any chance to use Ao Yongming as a hostage. Inside the tent, Ling Han smiled at Lu Yutong and said close up to her ear, "I'll bring you somewhere, don't resist." Feeling Ling Han's warm breath on her neck, Lu Yutong blushed and couldn't even hear what Ling Han said, nodding her head thoughtlessly. Ling Han grabbed onto Lu Yutong's delicate hand. With a thought Xiao, he already brought Lu Yutong and Ao Yongming into the Black Tower. Lu Yutong was taken aback, then cried out. They were just in a small narrow tent. How could they instantly come into such a large space? "Where's this?" she muttered. "A safe place." Ling Han didn't explain in detail, because it was hard to explain and involved his past life. Moreover, the Black Tower's existence was too big of a deal. It wasn't that he didn't trust Lu Yutong, but the secret itself was a heavy burden that he didn't want Lu Yutong to carry. Lu Yutong nodded, naturally believing fully in Ling Han. "Wow!" Hunyo soared over. Just as Lu Yutong thought this little girl had been missing her and thus spread her arms to hug her, Hunyo brilliantly wound around her and dove into Ling Han's embrace. Hunyo nudged Ling Han with her small head, and then turned around to make a funny face at Yutong, expressing her dominance. Ling Han belonged to Nyo. That was her implicit assertion. Li Yutong's face twitched. She'd never thought that the little girl would be so jealous. Ling Han patted Hunyo on the head and said to Lu Yutong, "I found you so quickly because of Nyo Nyo's help. You need to thank her properly." Hu Niu was even more pleased with herself, cracking a grin at Lu Yutong. Lu Yutong was speechless, feeling that she'd encountered a strong rival. Ling Han would guard against everyone but this little girl. The little girl could flirt all she wanted and stick onto Ling Han, an advantage that neither she nor Li Xichan had. Besides, the little girl obviously treated Ling Han like her private property. Her actions just now obviously represented guarding her food, displaying her excessive jealousy. Go rest for a bit. I need to question this guy. Ling Han picked up Ao Yongming who'd been thrown aside. This ingrate had to die, but he still wanted to learn a few things about Winter Moon sect. Outside, Uncle Fu suddenly frowned. It had been a long while since he heard any movements inside the tent. He couldn't help but listen closely, and his expression soon changed drastically, for he couldn't even hear the sounds breathing or anyone's heartbeat. He jumped up hurriedly and dove into the tent, but the tent was empty, with no other human figure inside. How was that possible? Uncle Fu's expression was ashen. Could this brat have some sort of teleportation ability and thus already took Ao Yongming far away? Chapter 233. Feng Yan's Backer. Reverie _ Pa pa pa. A flurry of slaps instantly woke Ao Yongming up. Where am I? Where's Uncle Fu? He asked with a shiver in his voice. Ling Han kicked him and said, Am I asking you, or are you asking me? Ao Yongming clenched his teeth, but upon seeing an unfamiliar environment, his expression paled. This obviously was somewhere far from the forest they were just at, or they wouldn't appear in a plane. Just how long was he unconscious that he was brought to a place so far away? Was Uncle Fu such a good-for-nothing that he let Ling Han run away with him? You really want to go against Winter Moon sect? He said coldly. Since he'd already flaunted his status as Winter Moon sect's direct disciple, he naturally wouldn't back down again, diminishing Winter Moon sect's prestige. Pa, Ling Han threw another kick, kicking off several of Ao Yongming's teeth. Ao Yongming's face was full of fresh blood and he looked extremely dreadful, but there was no need to pity an ingrate. Ling Han said indifferently, Why did you come here? Devil Sky Mystery Realm's appearance was an accident that no one could foresee, so Ling Han would definitely not believe Ao Yongming came for the Mystery Realm. Ao Yongming wiped the blood on the corner of his lips, revealing a hint of fear in his eyes. Uncle Fu was not beside him now and Winter Moon sect's reputation couldn't scare this extremely daring guy before him, so he took the wise path and said, I came to find someone. Pa, he took another kick. He was so angry that he wanted to climb up from the ground and put up a desperate fight against Ling Han, but as he saw Ling Han's cold eyes, he felt a chill within, losing all courage instantly. Don't leave things half said. If you continue to speak and break off, I'll break all your limbs, leaving only your mouth to talk, Ling Han said coldly. Ao Yongming felt a chill brewing from the bottom of his heart, instantly enveloping him as if his entire body froze over. If it were someone else who said such ruthless words, he would definitely snort in disdain who dared treat him so as a Winter Moon sect's disciple. However, Ling Han. This guy was truly ruthless, making him feel endless chills. The person I was looking for is called Feng Yan, he said honestly. Feng Yan. After hearing this name, Ling Han instantly came to a sudden realization, finally knowing where Feng Yan's confidence came from. Winter Moon sect. Why are you looking for him? What's the relationship between Feng Yan and Winter Moon sect? Ling Han asked. A few months ago when Feng Yan was traveling, he met one of the sect's elders, who intended to recruit him as a disciple. However, he was given a trial must break through to spiritual ocean tier in 3 months, Ao Yongming confessed. I wanted to get acquainted with Feng Yan, so I came to Rain Country to become Feng Yan's friend before his reputation became prominent. In the end, Devil Sky Mystery Realm opened while I was on the way, so I entered the Mystery Realm first. Ao Yongming was very miserable. He came to find Feng Yang in order to increase his status within Winter Moon sect, but never did he think that he would bump into Ling Han, a malignant star, before he met Feng Yan. Ling Han felt it odd and said, although Feng Yang has a special constitution, he only has a silver mirror body. What tier is that elder? Flower Blossom, or Spiritual Infant? Hearing him speak of Flower Blossom and Spiritual Infant tiers indifferently, Ao Yongming felt a wave of fright, because Ling Han's tone had absolutely no shred of respect and fear for them,
as if spiritual infant Tyr was not even worthy of his attention. The reality was certainly so.
Spiritual infant Tyr, he said with a quiver in his voice. Strange. Ling Han shook his head.
He now knew where Feng Yan's confidence came from. Becoming a spiritual infant Tyr's direct disciple naturally meant he could do anything he wanted in Rain Country. Even Rain Emperor wouldn't dare touch him. Otherwise, if an old monster in spiritual infant Tyr was drawn out, then even Rain Country's recluse Flower Blossom Tyr would be unable to fend him off. The question was one with silver mirror body really good enough to be a spiritual infant Tyr martial artist's disciple? Let alone silver mirror body, even gold mirror body was barely worthy of such an honor as spiritual infant Tyr already stood at the 7th stage of cultivation. What was left above was deity transformation and heaven Tyr.
Even further up?
Further up was shattering void, which could break open the skies and enter the divine plane, attaining godhood. Feng Yan should have another secret that made a spiritual infant Tyr cultivator recruit him as a disciple. This point Ling Han had already sensed. For example, he could fight against the eldest prince despite his cultivation being 2 layers lower, a domineering art like Son of Heaven fist technique that could borrow from the power of the nation in the latter's hands notwithstanding. Sooner or later we'll fight, and when the time comes, I'll dig out all your secrets.
Ling Han murmured.
Ling Han, if you let me go, I can pretend nothing ever happened.
Ao Yongming tested his luck.
You need a beating again?
Ling Han leisurely asked.
Ao Yongming instantly covered his mouth out of fright. He really had not many teeth left for Ling Han to trample on.
Who is Ao Feng to you?
Ling Han finally asked his main concern. Ao Yongming revealed a startled expression. How could a mere small martial artist from Rain Country know his father's name? Could it be that he too was? Impossible. His father had many illegitimate children, up to the hundreds, but every one of them was surnamed Ao.
So, Ling Han's expression turned cold.
That's my father,
Ao Yongming hurriedly said. What tier is Ao Yongming currently?
I'm not sure, Ao Yongming said, and explained hurriedly after seeing Ling Han's sharp gaze. I normally don't have many chances to see father, and I'm not his favorite child, so I'm not particularly sure. However, according to the people within the sect, father had already reached the peak stage of spiritual pedestal tier 5 years ago.
He involuntarily straightened his back.
Although Ao Feng was rather loose, his martial arts talent was exceptional, with the possibility of crossing into Flower Blossom tier and becoming Winter Moon Sect's true core personnel.
Ling Han acknowledged it tacitly.
After 10 years, Ao Feng's cultivation progress made quite a leap, which was normal. The thought of letting Ling Dongxing take revenge. That was a bit difficult. He had to increase his cultivation as fast as possible so that he would be able to restore Ling Dongxing's spirit base and use large amounts of medicinal pills to slam Ling Dongxing to Flower Blossom tier. Flower Blossom tier was the largest dividing line in martial arts. It could practically be said that spiritual pedestal tier cultivators were the strongest mortals, and Flower Blossom tier was a stage that surpassed mortals, an indescribable difference. If Ling Han reached the peak of spiritual pedestal tier, it would be impossible to beat someone in the first layer of the Flower Blossom tier even with his freakish abilities. Staying alive would already be something to be proud of. If Ling Dongxing was the first to cross into Flower Blossom tier, crushing Ao Feng would be as easy as the turn of a palm. Could ignore arts and skills, and the difference in experience. How many sons and daughters does your old man have?
Ling Han was suddenly a bit curious.
Ao Yongming just wanted to shake his head to say he didn't know, but then he thought of how ruthless Ling Han was, so he hurriedly replied, I'm not too clear.
Father never brought us together, but at least 300.
What a stud pig, Ling Han sneered, and changed his expression into a serious one before he asked, Do you know if someone called you Hong Chong?
Chapter 234. Interrogation. Reverie _ You Hong Chong.
Ao Yongming revealed a blank expression, shook his head and said, No. Seeing Ling Han's unfriendly expression, he immediately waved his hands and said, I really haven't heard. Then don't you have no use to me anymore?
Ling Han's vicious aura spread. Ao Yongming couldn't help but feel gloomy.
There were several tens of thousands of people from top to bottom in Wintermoon sect. How could he possibly know every single person's name? However, faced with Ling Han, a malignant god, he didn't even dare to fart as he inwardly ridiculed. Ling Han changed his mind and said, "What about Yu Zhenshan?"
Chief Yu.
Ao Yongming was stunned again. Yu Zhenshan's status in Wintermoon sect could be considered second only to that of Ao Feng, because the Yu family also had a reigning elder at the spiritual infant tier whose strength was not below that of the Ao family's elder. Ling Han was an unimportant person from Rain Country, so how was it possible that he knew about the Yu family and knew that he was Ao Feng's son?
He seemed to understand the Wintermoon sect thoroughly.
Seeing Ling Han glare at him, Ao Yongming hurriedly said, "Chief Yu is the same as father, at the peak stage of the spiritual pedestal tier. However, Chief Yu cannot be compared to father, because he only reached it 2 years ago."
This guy seemed to be a little complacent.
Ling Han sneered and said, "Are you really Ao Feng's son?
How come you're such a trash?"
Ao Yongming was embarrassed and angry, but he had no strength to refute. The Ao family certainly had great authority within the Wintermoon sect, controlling a surprising amount of resources. But the issue was that Ao family was not just Ao Feng, there were many other clansmen and strong cultivators that depended on the Ao family.
Besides, Ao Feng had too many illegitimate children.
How could it be possible for every single one of them to receive enough cultivation resources? Some of his illegitimate children even ran to other sects, as they could receive more cultivation resources based on their identity there. An example would be if Ao Yongming came to Huyang Academy and showed clearly that he was a Wintermoon sect disciple. Now, he wanted to enter your Huyang Academy. Were you willing to accept or not? You definitely had to take him in, and you wouldn't be able to ignore and throw him aside. You'd treat him like a baller. However, the majority of Ao Feng's illegitimate children still wanted their face, and wouldn't seek such gratuitous help, feeling it would diminish their status. Ao Yongming was a good example. Therefore, he relied on his identity as the Wintermoon sect's direct disciple. But his cultivation was only at the 5th layer of the element gathering tier, which was even lower than Qi Yongyi and the others.
"Ling Han, I've already told you what you wanted to know. Can you let me go now?" he said.
Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "I saved your life, and you exchanged for it with the ancient record, which made us even. But, you shouldn't have had evil ideas about me. The moment you took that step, you've pushed yourself into the abyss of death." "What, you're going to kill me?"
Ao Yongming asked in disbelief.
"You can't conceal this. When the time comes, the Wintermoon sect will crush you to pieces." Ling Han laughed aloud and said, "Wrong, even if the Wintermoon sect doesn't come to find me, I'll kill my way to their doorstep and settle something with them, especially your old man."
"Do you have any last words?"
Ao Yongming stared agape. This guy was crazy. He was only a mere small martial artist from Rain Country, but he said he was going to kill his way to the Wintermoon sect to settle something. Did he not know that the Wintermoon sect had many strong martial artists, including several hundred in the spiritual pedestal tier, dozens in the flower blossom tier, and nearly 10 in the spiritual infant tier? Such a force in the north region would be in the top ranks, and a mere martial artist in the 1st layer of the element gathering tier like you didn't even care about them. What exactly was going on?
No, wait. This guy's presence.
Ao Yongming opened his eyes suddenly and said, "How's it possible? You're already in the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier." At the Wintermoon sect, he had contacted too many martial artists with their cultivation in the gushing spring tier, so while he couldn't sense the aura belonging to higher cultivation tiers, it was still no problem for him if it was merely gushing spring tier. Several days ago, this guy was only at the 1st layer of the element gathering tier, but he was now in the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier. What was going on? Other people's cultivation progress was from 1 to 9, then a large tier breakthrough. Could it be this guy only needed to take one step? Ling Han sighed and said, "Your last words are truly strange."
"Whatever, I don't care. You can die now."
"No, don't kill me. Don't kill me." Ao Yongming waved his hands hurriedly. "I can be of use to you." "So useless, what would I want you for?" Ling Han off-handedly sent out a palm. Hong, a flame swept by, instantly burning Ao Yongming to ashes. Inside the Black Tower, he was a tyrant with abilities beyond that of Heaven tier.
He looked outside through the black tower. Uncle Fu and the others already left, probably thinking that they escaped in some way, and were now searching for them like a headless fly. He called Lu Yutong and Hu Niu and said, "Let's go out." With a thought, he already brought the two girls outside. Hu Niu already played like this a few times, so with her young age, she only thought it was fun. However, Lu Yutong turned pale from shock. This scene completely surpassed her understanding. They appeared at the location where the tent used to be, but the tent was already gone. There was a hole in the ground, probably because Uncle Fu thought they dug an underground tunnel to escape. Could they dig an underground tunnel in such a short amount of time? It was obviously impossible. As a spiritual ocean tear cultivator, Uncle Fu did such a thing. He was obviously so panicked that he tried everything in this desperate situation. "Ling Han, how come we're here? And where were we just now?" Lu Yutong said, still somewhat shocked. Ling Han laughed and said, "I obtained a treasure and we were inside it just now." Lu Yutong was even more shocked. The place they had been in was ridiculously large, so how could it be carried by him? Moreover, they clearly appeared at the same location, which meant that they were always here. It was such a large space, so how could Uncle Fu and the others miss it? Ling Han didn't explain further, because the Black Tower's existence was a big secret. Those who did not gain his complete trust would never be able to enter the Black Tower unless never to come out. "Let's go into the depths of the mystery realm," he said in high spirits. The Black Tower was equivalent to a complete safety guarantee, and Ling Han had great assurance in delving into the depths of the mystery realm to discover its secrets. Lu Yutong and Hu Niu naturally didn't oppose, so the three shuttled through the dense forest, venturing deeper. One day later, they walked out of the dense forest, and saw in front of them a small mountain full of ups and downs. "From here onwards, we're entering the Devil Sky Mystery Realm's danger zone. The beasts here are extremely terrifying, but spirit grasses here are more abundant," Lu Yutong said. "Someone once ate a mysterious fruit here, and instantly rose from the element gathering tier to the spiritual ocean tier." This was certainly shocking, but mystery realms were associated with shattering void tier, so it wasn't strange that a spirit fruit like that actually existed. "However, further down lies a large river that my family has strictly forbid everyone from crossing." Lu Yutong paused, and then explained, "No one has ever returned alive from the other side of the river." Chapter 235. A Small Prophet. Reverie _ Ling Han nodded. From the logbook, it could be understood that behind the large river, formations were set up, and if one wanted to cross, one either needed a profound understanding of formations, or a high-tier strength that could crush them. If he wanted to understand this mystery realm, he had to venture into its deepest parts. If he were in the element gathering tier, Ling Han definitely would not overestimate his abilities and act accordingly. There was no need to throw away his life because of curiosity. However, he had complete confidence now. Even if he couldn't find out the mystery realm's secret, at least he would be able to retreat safely. "Let's see if I can find some spirit grass," he said. The Black Tower's first layer had the ability to cultivate spirit grasses. He was the alchemy emperor. If he didn't make use of this, then he would be truly foolish. The three circled round the mountain. This area was very dangerous, and large enough that people were rarely seen. All that could be seen were the mottled forests. The trees, grasses, and flowers differed greatly in color, resulting in a complex visual effect. Unexpectedly, Hu Niu once more showed off her capability. The little girl began to sniff, and she surprisingly brought Ling Han to a blue star grass. This was a 4th-level spirit grass which could be refined into a 4th-level anger chi pill. After spiritual ocean tier experts took it, their power could increase by 20% or so, a very practical pill. Hu Niu, how did you find it?" Ling Han asked out of curiosity. "Niu is a foodie," Hu Niu said, very pleased with herself. Ling Han couldn't help but burst into laughter. He wasn't too surprised by this either, because Hu Niu's spirit base was too surprising. She naturally couldn't be normal. Having a few abilities different from normal people was rather expectedly normal. Lu Yutong was very gloomy. In rivaling for affection, her performance was actually completely dominated by a 5 or 6-year-old little girl. She somewhat blushed with shame. Ling Han carefully dug out the blue star grass. The more mature the blue star grass was, the better the effects of the refined anger chi pill would be. At most, it could even raise one's power tenfold. Though the medicinal effect definitely wasn't something just anyone could endure, it wasn't impossible that one's body would burst open from the violent medicinal effect. He planted the blue star grass inside the Black Tower. 1 year could equal 1,000. Normally speaking, the blue star grass aged 50 years was already good enough. Now, the blue star grass was about 30 years, so it only needed 1 day to reach 50 years in maturity inside the tower. Hu Niu swiftly made a further contribution, very quickly finding a 7-string wood. 7-string tree, also known as cloudy tree, was a great support item for those who cultivated ice arts. It didn't need to be made into a pill, but simply refined like a strange fire. 7-string tree's price differed with maturity. The more mature the better. But normally, it was hard to find one older than 1,000 years. This 7-string tree was only a little over 100 years, but it didn't matter. Living within the Black Tower for a few months would make it reach 1,000 years of age. However, luck wasn't always with them. In the following 2 days, they had no gains, though Hu Niu found another spirit tree. Unfortunately, the fruits on it had already been plucked. But Ling Han didn't care about it, simply transplanting it into the Black Tower. There's someone nearby. Ling Han suddenly halted. Yes. Hu Niu, too, nodded in a serious manner. 10 or so young people came down from the mountain ahead. The oldest was not older than 30 years old, and there were both males and females among them. Ha! Ling Han's glance swept by, revealing a hint of surprise. Ling Han! A girl within the group called out first and waved at him, walking over quickly. It was Li Si-chan. Before, she didn't make it to the center hall, but they unexpectedly met here. Seeing Li Si-chan walk over, those youngsters followed. Each and every one had their nostrils pointed to the sky, appearing very haughty. Oh, you're that Ling Han? A young man in embroidered clothing said indifferently. His tone was calm, but it carried a sense of superiority, as if of someone of high status looking down on someone normal. Are there many Ling Hans? Ling Han said casually. Shua, a youngster, butted in and said, I heard you can fend against Feng Yan, but I don't believe it anyways. What kind of thing are you, and what does it have to do with me whether you believe it or not? Ling Han said indifferently. The youngster was enraged, and yelled out, I am Huang family's Huang Wei Zhe. You dare insult me by calling me a thing? Oh, then I misspoke. So you're not a thing. Ling Han nodded, readily changing his words. You! Huang Wei Zhe's eyes opened wide with anger, revealing a murderous aura. Hu Niu immediately bared her teeth, and her small hands already involuntarily danced around while she revealed her sharp fangs. Wei Zhe! The young man in embroidered clothing stopped him, then said with a laugh, How can you forget your manners in front of 2 flowers? Brother Chung, who is right? Huang Wei Zhe hurriedly retracted his angry expression. He couldn't lose his manners in front of these 2 stunning beauties. Sister Yu Tong. The young man in embroidered clothing greeted Lu Yu Tong. The 2 obviously knew each other. This guy didn't give face to Ling Han, so Lu Yu Tong naturally wouldn't give him face, either. She just turned her delicate face away slightly, pretending not to hear. Seeing this, these youngsters were in an extremely bad mood. What sort of status and ability did Ling Han have that could make a talented beauty so unswerving? Moreover, if it was only Lu Yu Tong, then it wouldn't matter. But now even Li Si-chan seemed to have already become his. How could the youngsters in the imperial city accept this? I am Li Cheng-hu. The young man embroidered clothing tried to maintain his bearings and said to Ling Han, Brother Ling Han's name has been known to me for a long time. Could we spar for a bit? Li Cheng-hu? Why aren't you called Li Chenglong One? Aren't your aspirations too low? Ling Han laughed. Li Cheng-hu couldn't help but reveal an indignant expression. The dragon was the imperial family's totem, and if he were called Chenglong, then that would offend the imperial family. Several thousand years ago, when Rain Country was first established, it wouldn't matter much. That was when the 9 large families' forces were about the same. But now, the Qi family had an old monster in the flower blossom tier behind them. With the power of one family, they could firmly suppress the 8 large noble families. The latter had to reluctantly take a step back.
Such a sharp tongue, but what of your ability? He said coldly.
Li Chenghu, you're too shameless.
Ling Han is only in the first layer of the element gathering tier, and you're already in the third layer of the gushing spring tier.
You have the nerve to ask for a spar? Li Si-chan immediately yelled out.
First layer of the element gathering tier? Li Hu Cheng and the others had a strange expression, because the presence Ling Han gave off was that of someone in the first layer of the gushing spring. The third layer against the first layer was certainly a bit unfair, but both were early-stage gushing spring tier, which was in an acceptable range.
Ling Han sighed. Why did there always had to be someone who wanted to be owned?
He flicked his finger and said, I don't have time to waste on you dregs. Come at me together, otherwise someone might come out unconvinced after I beat one of you.
If you lose, then get lost. Impudence.
These youngsters were getting riled up to think he dared to look down on them like that. You're tuning in to the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.